Chapter 417. To most martial artists in the underworld, a martial Dao master was an unreachable existence. LV Fengxian dared to go all out in the face of a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and man realm, and he also had the courage to go all out. However, they were now facing an expert at the martial Dao grandmaster level. Even with LV Fengxian's temperament, he could not help but feel a little desperate at this time. However, Chu Xiu was very calm at this moment, and he seemed to have nothing to fear. Just as Nie Renlong was about to make a move, a slightly old voice suddenly sounded. If Guan Siyu isn't worthy of your respect, then what about I? Everyone looked in the direction where the voice came from, and saw an old man in a black robe with a black long sword hanging on his waist walking toward them. With a single step, he covered a distance of more than 10 feet. His aura was shocking, and it was clear that he was also a martial Dao master. Behind the old man was a young man in his 20s. Although he was only at the physical invulnerability stage, he had an extraordinary aura. It was obvious that he wasn't someone easy to deal with. Lu Fengxian was stunned. He looked at Chu Xiu and sent a voice transmission in confusion. Brother Chu, did you find him? Chu Xiu nodded and said, never overestimate your opponent's bottom line. The so-called not to bully the weak in the underworld is just a casual saying. In the face of absolute strength, even if you really bully the weak, what can others do to you? I guessed that Nie Renlong would make a move this time, so I made some preparations in advance. Now, it really came in handy. Lu Fengxian nodded, but she didn't know if he took it in. However, the others could tell that although official Chu and Lu Fengxian were good friends, the two of them had completely different personalities. Only God knew how they became friends. To put it nicely, Lu Fengxian's personality was carefree and casual. To put it bluntly, she was a little impulsive and pure. Even in the midst of escaping, LV Fengxian actually did not have any plans. She was completely relying on her own strength to forcefully kill her way out. Wherever she wanted to go, she would go. Although she looked valiant and powerful, there was no order to speak of. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's personality was very obvious. He would plan before taking action. In terms of using his brain, Chu Xiu was obviously better than Lu Fengxian. However, in the eyes of the crowd, Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian working together was a good idea. Chu Xiu would plan the overall situation, while Lu Fengxian would fight. The two of them could work well together. At this moment, Nie Renlong looked at the newcomer and frowned. He said in confusion, 9 Abandonment Sword, Sheng Tianyao. What are you doing here? As far as I know, you have nothing to do with the Guanzhong torture room or Chu Xiu. The person in front of him was the Northern Yan's famous loose cultivator, 9 Abandonment Sword, Sheng Tianyao. Nie Renlong had long heard of his name, but he had not really interacted with him. However, if the other party was really a pure loose cultivator, Nie Renlong would not be afraid of him at all. No matter what, he was the leader of the Righteous Manor, one of the 6 gangs. Why would he be afraid of a loose cultivator? He did not even want to give face to Guan Siyu, let alone Shang Tianyao. However, the crux of the problem was that Shang Tianyao's background was not as simple as a loose cultivator. Shang Tianyao was the Northern Yan's royal consecrator. He was the kind of consecrator who was loyal only to the Northern Yan royal family. Simply put, Shang Tianyao was the Northern Yan royal family's hired thug. He was backed by the entire Northern Yan royal family. Nie Renlong could not care less about the Guanzhong torture room, but he could not ignore the Northern Yan royal family and the Northern Yan royal family. Since ancient times, the Zhonghu and the royal family had always been at odds with each other. The people of the Zhonghu did not want to be bound by the rules of the royal family, and the royal family did not want the people of the Zhonghu to exist. Unfortunately, both sides could not do anything to each other. Therefore, the Zhonghu and the royal family had reached a tacit agreement. As long as the sects in the Zhonghu did not become too arrogant and did not challenge the authority of the royal family would not act against the people of the Zhonghu. As long as the royal family did not want to completely eradicate the people of the Zhonghu, most of the people of the Zhonghu would abide by the rules and would not break them. Therefore, when the people of the Zhonghu fought in the state capitals, they would deliberately control their strength. It did not matter if they broke something, but if they really hurt innocent people, it would be a violation of the rules and could easily cause the royal family to intervene. Although the royal family and the Zhonghu were at odds, they also had areas where they could work together. For example, in the past, the Eastern Qi was extremely powerful. It occupied the rich lands of the Central Plains and had the momentum to conquer the mountains and rivers. It even fought against the northern Yan and western Chu at the same time. The northern Yan was able to defeat the eastern Qi and destroy the small country Wei kingdom that was attached to eastern Qi, becoming the northern Yan's Wei county. It was all thanks to the old emperor of the northern Yan, Emperor Wu of Yan, Xianglong's unparalleled courage. He joined forces with the northern Yan Jianghu to fight against the eastern Qi and won the war. Therefore, since then, the northern Yan could be said to be the country with the closest relationship with the people of the Jianghu among the three countries. Recruiting foreign officials had almost become an open rule. Shang Tianyao was a member of the royal family, and he had been a member of the northern Yan royal family for more than 10 years. He had a deep network of connections. In the northern Yan, Shang Tianyao was indeed more influential than Guan Siyu. Of course, this was only Shang Tianyao's identity on the surface. According to the news from Mei Qinglian, Shang Tianyao was a martial arts grandmaster of the Yinma clan and the only successor of the Nine Demon Sword sect, a great demonic sect in the past. Therefore, his identity was not only the Nine Abandonment Sword, Shang Tianyao, but also the Nine Demon Sword. Shang Tianyao sneered. Although I have nothing to do with Chu Xiu, I have a relationship with the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, I was young and impetuous, and I offended someone I shouldn't have. If it wasn't for Chu Juxia, I wouldn't have the strength I have today. Now that the Guanzhong torture room's power has been stabilized, I can't find a chance to repay Chu Juxia's kindness. Now that I've finally found a chance, how can I ignore the young talents of the Guanzhong torture room? Nye Renlong, I know what kind of person you are. I also know about the bull*** tea things you did in the past. However, I didn't expect that you're getting worse and worse. You're actually bullying the weak in such a righteous and self-righteous manner. Anyway, with me here today, you can't touch a single person from the Guanzhong torture room. Nye Renlong frowned. He didn't expect that this matter would attract the old man Shang Tianyao. Nye Renlong didn't doubt Shang Tianyao's words. After all, when Chu Kuanga was roaming the Jianghu, there were too many martial artists who owed him favors, so many that they couldn't be counted. Even if only a tenth of them remembered Chu Kuanga's kindness, it would still be a terrifying thing. Just like now, Nye Renlong had calculated everything, but he did not expect Shang Tianyao to interfere. At this moment the young man behind Shang Tianyao smiled and said, Villa Master Nye, where possible, one should forgive and forget. If you go too far, it won't look good for anyone, right? This young man was only in the physical invulnerability realm, but his tone carried a hint of superiority. Even when he was facing Nye Renlong, the Villa Master of the righteous manner, he was still like this. Nye Renlong frowned and said, Who are you? A martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm actually dared to speak to him in such a tone. Even if he used the dumbest method, he would know that the other party was either an idiot, or he was confident. The young man smiled and said, That's easy. My name is Xiang Chong. Villa Master Nye should have heard of my name. Nye Renlong's eyes narrowed. Of course he knew this name. He was the 13th prince of the current emperor, and also the most favored son of the emperor, the 13th prince, Xiang Chong. Although the northern Yan emperor Xianglong was old, his body was still healthy, and he had many descendants. The previous northern Yan crown prince died in an accident a few years ago. No one knew what Xianglong was thinking, but he never appointed another crown prince. This gave his descendants the opportunity to covet the throne. Right now, the 13th prince was a popular candidate for the position of crown prince. Although he was very young and did not have enough experience in the northern Yan court, Xiang Chong's only advantage was that he looked very similar to Xianglong when he was young, almost 90% similar. Therefore, he was also the one Xianglong doted on the most among all the princes. At this moment, Xiang Chong was standing on Shang Tianyao's side and pressuring him. This prince probably wanted to rope in Shang Tianyao. After all, Xiang Chong's foundation in the imperial court was weak. Whether it was in the military, the civil officials, or the imperial court, he did not have much power. Therefore, it was not a bad idea to target the royal family. Nye Renlong could almost guess the cause and effect of these things at a glance, but he did not want to make an enemy of a prince. If he offended Xiang Chong, although he was not the crown prince, he still had all kinds of ways to make trouble for him. Although a prince could not influence the emperor's decision to destroy the morgue, he could at least cause some trouble for the morgue. But at this moment, a cold voice was heard. I say, 13th brother, You really have your hands in the pugilistic world. Aren't you afraid of being scolded by father? Don't be afraid, Heights Lord Nye. My 13th brother is just a fox borrowing the tiger's might. He does not have much power in the imperial court. Just because of father's favor, he let father deal with the morgue, one of the 6 gangs. Father is not that stupid. Another group of people came from afar. The leader was a young man in his 30s. He wore a golden robe and had a small mustache. He had an extraordinary aura. Behind him were a few eunuchs and a few maids. He was much more arrogant than Xiang Chong. This time, Nye Renlong did not need to hear the name to know that this person had a powerful background. He was the second prince, Xiang Li. Since ancient times, the imperial court had always respected the elders and not the juniors. With the crown prince dead, as the second prince, he had the greatest hope. Therefore, Xiang Li had many supporters in the imperial court. Other than not being favored by Xiang Chong, everyone else was stronger than Xiang Chong. Chapter 4:18. The 13th prince, Xiang Chong, and the second prince, Xiang Li, were also here. No one expected this, not even Chu Xiu. This was originally a grudge between him and the morgue. How did the 2 princes get involved? In fact, the reason why Xiang Chong was here was very simple. Xiang Chong wanted to rope in Shang Tianyao, but there was something fishy about Shang Tianyao's identity. How could he agree to Xiang Chong's request so easily? Therefore, Shang Tianyao did not directly agree or reject Xiang Chong's invitation. Instead, he pretended to be polite. This time, when Xiang Chong heard that Shang Tianyao was going to help, he hurried over to do Shang Tianyao a favor. He wanted to let Shang Tianyao see how courteous he was so that he could join him. Xiang Li's appearance here was even simpler. He heard about Xiang Chong's movements and came to cause trouble. There were so many princes in the northern Yen, but the crown prince was dead. As the second prince, Xiang Li's ability and background were not bad. Logically speaking, he should be the most popular successor to the crown prince's position. Even most of the power in the northern Yen court was inclined towards him. However, one must not forget that the northern Yen emperor, Xianglong, was still alive. Among the emperors of the northern Yen dynasty, Xianglong was not the founder of the country. But it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the leader of the resurgence. When Eastern Qi was at its strongest, Xianglong joined forces with the northern Yen martial arts world and West Chu to resist Eastern Qi, forcibly breaking Eastern Qi's hegemony. This kind of achievement could be said to be unique among the emperors of the northern Yen. Therefore, in the northern Yen court, Xianglong's prestige was absolute. If he did not express his opinion, then Xiang Li would be the most popular candidate to inherit the crown prince's position. However, as long as Xianglong spoke up and wanted Xiang Chong to be the crown prince, no one in the northern Yen would dare to oppose him. So in these past few years, Xiang Li had spared no effort to suppress Xiang Chong, and he wanted to make sure that Xiang Chong didn't have the slightest chance to turn things around. As long as it was Xiang Chong's doing, he would destroy it and target it. Just like now, although he had nothing to do with the morgue, just because Xiang Chong was standing against it, he would stand on the side of the morgue. Xiang Chong looked at Xiang Li with anger in his eyes. Ever since he was young, he had always been suppressed by Xiang Li. In fact, Xiang Chong did not have much ambition in the beginning. He was ranked 13th, and with so many older brothers ahead of him, the position of crown prince would never fall to him. However, it was precisely because he resembled his father the most that he had been bullied and targeted by Xiang Li since he was young. As a result, Xiang Chong's mentality had also changed slightly after he grew up. Aren't you worried that I'll steal the position of crown prince? Fine, I originally didn't want this position, but since you're all afraid that I'll get it, then I'll really fight for this position. It was at this point that Xiang Chong began to prepare to fight for the position of crown prince. At the same time, he would have to face Xiang Li's even fiercer suppression. The anger on Xiang Chong's face disappeared as he looked at Xiang Li. He only smiled coldly and said, "Second brother, you've been paying a lot of attention to me. You've been following behind me all day like a shadow. Aren't you tired?" A trace of mockery appeared on Xiang Li's face as he said, "What, are you angry? To be honest, I haven't been paying too much attention to you. I have people by your side. Don't you believe that I'll have people report to me in detail what you eat at night and which woman you sleep with, not to mention where you go?" A look of shock appeared on Xiang Chong's face. However, he soon calmed down and only snorted coldly, "Useless provocation. Although Xiang Chong was young, he was no idiot. If he were to go back and investigate the people by his side with great fanfare because of Xiang Li's provocation, that would be very disappointing. Xiang Li said slowly, whether it's useful or not, you know it yourself. As he said this, Xiang Li turned his gaze to Nie Renlong and smiled. Manor Lord Nie, the affairs of the Jianghu should be left to the Jianghu. The people of the imperial court will not easily interfere in the affairs of the Jianghu. Otherwise they would be breaking the rules. Feel free to do what you want. The Northern Yan imperial court will not make things difficult for you, and no one will dare to. Nie Renlong's lips curled into a smile as he said, then I'll have to thank your highness. With Xiang Li's words, Nie Renlong no longer had to be afraid of the Northern Yan imperial court. Nie Renlong looked directly at Shang Tianyao and said in a low voice, Shang Tianyao, this is my memorial hall's business. It has nothing to do with you. If you want to repay Chu Kuanga's kindness, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. However, if you want to interfere in this matter, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. From Nie Renlong's point of view, Shang Tianyao only wanted to find an opportunity to repay Chu Kuanga's kindness. His target was only the Guanzhong torture room, not Chu Xiao. Now that he was going to take action with an unyielding attitude, Shang Tianyao would most likely give in and find another opportunity to repay the Guanzhong torture room. There was no need to fight to the death with the memorial hall. However, Nie Renlong did not know that Shang Tianyao's real target was not the Guanzhong torture room, but Chu Xiao. Shang Tianyao did not participate in the battle on Mount Fuyu because he was the Northern Yan Imperial Court's protector and had a mission at that time. He did not have enough time. However, Mr. Liu had sent someone to inform him of the details of the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain. His faction was also very close to the phaseless demon sect, so he naturally knew Chu Xiao's true identity. This was the most outstanding young talent of the Yinma branch. For this reason, Shang Tianyao had to protect Chu Xiao. Moreover, Mei Qinglian had also sent him a message to help Chu Xiao. Shang Tianyao would not give in so easily. Looking at Nie Renlong, Shang Tianyao said coldly, "Don't care about feelings? I didn't ask you to care about feelings today. If I watch the most outstanding disciple of the Guanzhong torture room's younger generation get hurt in front of me, how can I face Chu Juxia? Anyway, as long as I'm here today, your memorial hall can forget about touching Chu Xiao and the others." As soon as he finished speaking, Shang Tianyao had already unsheathed his long sword, and the cold light was terrifying. Nie Renlong frowned. Shang Tianyao's stubbornness was somewhat beyond his imagination. In the past, Nie Renlong had never dealt with Shang Tianyao, but he had heard of Shang Tianyao's reputation. In his impression, Shang Tianyao was also a rather slippery person. Today, for the sake of a dead person's kindness, he went against the memorial hall to the end. Was Chu Kuanga's charm that great? Shaking his head, Nie Renlong sighed and also took a step forward. The aura around his body soared to the sky. In fact, Nie Renlong did not like to use this kind of forceful method to solve problems. For him, it was better not to make a move if he could. However, looking at the current situation, today's battle was inevitable. Although Nie Renlong did not like this kind of inexplicable fight, he was not afraid to fight with others. In the past, when the memorial hall was just built, the number of warriors who died under his hands was also not small. Shang Tianyao, since you're so stubborn, then don't blame me for not giving you face. Today, I'd like to see the power of your 9 abandonment sword, and what qualifications do you have to be recruited by the Northern Yan royal family? As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Renlong had already blasted out his palm. In mid-air, the powerful Gang Qi condensed into a huge palm print that was dozens of feet wide, and it fell down. Shang Tianyao's eyes revealed a touch of coldness. He unsheathed the black long sword in his hand. The scabbard was black, and the blade was also as black as ink. As he stabbed out with his sword, the surrounding night seemed to be integrated into his sword. The sword broke the dawn and tore the sky. The sword chi collided with the cloud-encompassing universe hand and a loud boom rang out. The powerful sword chi tore the cloud-encompassing universe hand apart. However, as Nie Renlong's hands continued to dance, the power of the world around him continued to swirl and condense, completely wrapping around Shang Tianyao. Shang Tianyao coldly snorted, and a black mist erupted from the body of his sword. When the sword was unsheathed, the faint howls of ghosts and gods could be heard. Countless sword chis burst out from the black mist, tearing apart the astral energy, and once again condensed into a huge astral sword that charged towards Nie Renlong. Shang Tianyao true identity was the successor of the Nine Demon Sword sect, a major demonic sect. However, his luck was quite good. He had once accidentally obtained several ancient sword techniques, and after mastering them thoroughly, he finally condensed 9 powerful sword techniques with endless transformations. This was also the origin of his nickname, Nine Abandonment Sword. Therefore, even if Shang Tianyao did not use his trump card, the Demon Sword, he could still exert 90% of his strength. Nie Renlong held the heaven and earth in his hand, and a powerful force grabbed hold of Shang Tianyao's sword intent, melting it and tearing it apart. Waves of strange and unfathomable power shot towards Shang Tianyao along the trajectory of the sword intent, but Shang Tianyao immediately retreated. The sword in his hand turned into countless sword qis, and they attacked from all directions. The two martial Dao masters were locked in a stalemate, but the more they fought, the deeper Nie Renlong's frown became. As a famous figure in the Jianghu, Nie Renlong was confident in his strength. If he took out his trump card and went all out, he had a certain degree of confidence in defeating Shang Tianyao. However, the problem was that Shang Tianyao seemed to have gone mad. He actually went all out against him, as if he wanted to protect Chu Xiu even if he had to risk his life. Therefore, even if Nie Renlong went all out, he was not confident that he could escape unscathed when facing Shang Tianyao in this state. He was the leader of the morgue and the only martial Dao master in the entire morgue. If he was injured and needed to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, there was no telling what would happen to the morgue. If the news were to spread, Nie Renlong could not guarantee that his enemies would not hit him when he was down. Therefore, Nie Renlong was also conflicted at the moment. Should he go all out and even pay the price of injury to get rid of Shang Tianyao, then kill Chu Xiu, or should he just give up? After a quarter of an hour of intense battle, Nie Renlong took the initiative to retreat more than 30 meters and said with a gloomy gaze, Shang Tianyao, how much did Chu Kuanga owe you in the past? Is it worth it for you to risk your life for a junior martial artist in the Guanzhong torture room? Chapter 419. Nie Renlong took the initiative to retreat. His attitude was clear. When Shang Tianyao heard Nie Renlong's question, he said expressionlessly, Nie Renlong, you are too calculative. Of course, you won't understand this. Do you still want to continue fighting? I will accompany you to the end. Nie Renlong looked deeply at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, then waved his hand and said, let's go. The group of warriors from the morgue were somewhat unwilling. Their morgue had lost 2 unity of heaven and man experts to their opponent. How could they just let it go like this? However, even though they were indignant, Nie Donglu was even more indignant. Even though his father had personally taken action, Chu Xiu had managed to escape. This was simply illogical. However, Nie Donglu was much more rational than the other warriors in the morgue. He knew that the entire morgue was supported by his father alone. Meng Yuanlong could die, and so could Han Feng, but Nie Renlong could not be injured or harmed. No matter how much he wanted to kill Chu Xiu and eliminate this threat, he could not let his father take the risk. After Nie Renlong left, Xiang Li snorted coldly at Xiang Chong. He turned his gaze to Shang Tianyao and said with a gloomy expression, Senior Shang, those who are involved in the struggle for the royal family, once they choose the wrong side, will have a miserable ending. I hope that Senior Shang will think it over carefully before making a decision. Shang Tianyao said indifferently, I don't need the second prince to worry about this. Xiang Li snorted coldly. In any case, in his opinion, Shang Tianyao was already on Xiang Chong's side. After everyone left, Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Shang Tianyao and said, Thank you, Senior Shang, for saving me. Chu Xiu is very grateful. Shang Tianyao gave Chu Xiu a look and said with a smile, In the past, I received great kindness from Chu Juxia. Now that I finally have the chance to repay this kindness, this small matter is not worth mentioning. Chu Xiu said solemnly, Don't worry, Senior Shang. When we return to the Guanzhong torture room, I will tell Hallmaster Guan everything that happened here. I will never forget Senior Shang's help. Chu Xiu and Shang Tianyao were talking politely with a straight face, but in fact, only they knew the meaning behind their words. Shang Tianyao meant that he was ordered by Mei Qinglian to save Chu Xiu. They were all from the Yinma clan, so it was not worth mentioning. What Chu Xiu meant was that he would tell Mei Qinglian everything after he returned. He would never forget this favor of helping him. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, Chu Xiu was just being polite to Shang Tianyao. It was not a big deal. At this time, Chu Xiu also turned his eyes to the 13th prince, Xiang Chong. He cupped his hands and said, 13th prince, thank you for speaking up for justice just now. Although Chu Xiu and the others knew that Xiang Chong helped Chu Xiu mostly because of Shang Tianyao, he was indeed on Chu Xiu's side. Naturally, Chu Xiu had to express his gratitude. Xiang Chong laughed and said, Official Chu, you are too polite. In fact, I do not like the behavior of the memorial hall. However, as a prince, I cannot express my opinion on some matters in the Jianghu. Speaking of this, Xiang Chong suddenly said to Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, Official Chu, and young hero Lu, both of you are rare young talents in the Jianghu. Have you ever considered changing places? Official Chu, although you are now the Guanxi penal officer of the Guanzhong torture room and may even take over the position of hallmaster in the future, as far as I know, Hallmaster Guan of the torture hall is not very old. As long as he is still in power, you can't ignore him. If you come under my command, I promise to find you a position in the imperial court that is worthy of your identity. What do you think? And young hero Lu, with all due respect, although you have survived this time, the memorial hall has a lot of connections in northern Yen. As long as you are in northern Yen, you will be in danger. If you come under my command, I can guarantee that the memorial hall will not dare to touch you. You will even be in charge of all the martial artists and foreign officials under my command. Although I, Xiang Chong, am born in the royal family, the people I admire the most are young talents like Official Chu and young hero Lu, who are free to repay favors and take revenge. I am used to being straightforward. In the past, Nie Dong Lu wanted to be friends with me, but I was too lazy to talk to him. It is too tiring to deal with such scheming people. So I will be straightforward. If the two of you can help me ascend the throne, there will be a place for both of you in northern Yen in the future. Of course, if the two of you don't agree, you can just treat it as a pipe dream. After all, among the many children of my father, I am the weakest one, although I am the most favored one. Xiang Chong was blatantly soliciting Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. There was no probing, it was very simple and direct. With Chu Xiu's identity and status, even Xiang Chong was embarrassed to ask Chu Xiu to listen to his orders. So he directly promised Chu Xiu an official position in the Northern Yen Imperial Court. Although Lu Fengxian was not as famous as Chu Xiu in Jianghu, Lu Fengxian's killing of Meng Yuanlong was enough for him to be in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Xiang Chong said that he would give all his power to Lu Fengxian. This was also a sign of his trust in Lu Fengxian. Moreover, based on Lu Fengxian's performance while he was being hunted, Lu Fengxian was also worthy of this position. Xiang Chong believed that as long as Lu Fengxian was willing to serve under him, Lu Fengxian would definitely not betray him. Xiang Chong looked at Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian with a sincere gaze. His attitude was very sincere. In fact, Chu Xiu could also see that Xiang Chong was really different from the other princes. Although he was from the royal family, his personality was straightforward and heroic. He did not put on airs and even referred to himself as I instead of this prince. When Xiang Chong was born, his title was Prince Xian. This title was not good, but it was not bad either. But when Xiang Chong was in his teens, his appearance became more and more similar to his father, Xiang Long, when he was young. He received more and more favor. In the end, Xiang Long even personally conferred him the title of Prince Yen. His fief was in Yanshan County, which was next to the capital of northern Yen. It could be said that he was extremely favored. Of course, Xiang Chong's current personality might also be related to his childhood experiences. After all, in the beginning, Xiang Long did not pay much attention to Xiang Chong. As the 13th prince, he naturally did not have any chance to ascend to the throne. Therefore, from the moment he was born, the people around him taught Xiang Chong the way they would teach an idle prince. No one taught him the skills of an emperor, such as scheming and scheming. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. Chu Xiu took the lead and said, "In the past, when I betrayed the Blue Dragon Society, I was hunted down by the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society like a stray dog. It was the Guanzhong torture room who took me in at a critical moment. Therefore, I can only disappoint your Highness's good intentions." Lu Fengxian also shook her head and said, "Your Highness, many people know my personality. I'm used to being free and unfettered, and I don't like to be restrained by others. Brother Chu has been a torturer in Guanzhong for so long, but I have never chosen to seek refuge with Brother Chu. In the past, Heaven Alliance's alliance leader Chen also asked me to join the Heaven Alliance, but I rejected him. It's not that your highness did anything wrong, but I, Lu Fengxian, have always been a wanderer. It's not time for me to settle down. Hearing Chu Xiao and Lu Fengxian say this, Xiang Chong's expression was a little gloomy. However, he still smiled and said, "It's nothing. It's within my expectations. As for the throne, it's my fortune to obtain it, and my fate to lose it. In fact, from the very beginning, I never wanted to seize the throne. However, as Imperial Father changed my title to Prince Yan, Xiang Li and the others became fearful of me and began to suppress me. I couldn't take it anymore and prepared to make it real, seizing the throne for them to see." At this point, the corners of Xiang Chong's mouth suddenly curled into a self-deprecating smile. Perhaps I really don't have the aura of a ruler. In the past few years, apart from Imperial Fathers doting on me, I have nothing. My subordinates are also very weak, so no one will come to seek refuge with me. Although Imperial Father dotes on me, he is a very rational person. He will never support me just because he dotes on me. In this aspect, he treats all his children equally. Originally, Chu Xiao didn't care about Xiang Chong's words. However, when he suddenly heard the words Prince Yan, Chu Xiao suddenly asked, "Your Highness, your title is Prince Yan?" Xiang Chong asked in surprise, "That's right. Don't you know, Official Chu?" The corners of Chu Xiao's mouth curled into a smile. "I've been away for a long time, so I don't really care about some things in the Northern Yan. I really don't know about this. However, Your Highness, you don't have to worry about it. There are always ups and downs in life. I believe that your future will definitely not stop here." Xiang Chong forced a smile and said, "Thank you for your auspicious words, Official Chu. I hope so." Chu Xiao didn't say anything, but what he said just now was true. When he first heard that Xiang Chong was the 13th prince, Chu Xiao didn't react. He thought that Xiang Chong was just an ordinary prince. However, when Xiang Chong said that he had been given the title of Prince Yan, Chu Xiao then remembered that in the original plot, the Northern Yan's inheritance war was also very exciting. In particular, His Majesty, Prince Yan, would shine in the future. Of course, Xiang Chong looked a little more miserable now. There was no one around him who could help him. Not to mention young talents like Chu Xiao and Lu Fengxian, Xiang Chong even had to curry favor with a martial Dao master like Shang Tianyao, hoping to get his support. That's right. It was just support, not loyalty. With Xiang Chong's current wealth, he was not qualified to make a martial Dao master like Shang Tianyao swear loyalty to him. After the two sides chatted for a while, Chu Xiao and the others bid farewell to Shang Tianyao and the 13th prince. Chu Xiao still had something to say to Shang Tianyao, but Xiang Chong followed closely behind Shang Tianyao. As for the Yinma clan, they could only talk about it in the future. Chapter 420. After parting ways with Shang Tianyao and the others, Chu Xiao brought Lu Fengxian back to the Guanzhong torture room. If they stayed any longer in the Northern Yan, they would be courting death. Lu Fengxian had killed Nie Yuanlong, and Chu Xiao had killed Han Feng. The two of them had thoroughly offended the memorial hall. This time, Nie Renlong only retreated because of Shang Tianyao's intervention. If it were any other time, Nie Renlong would not care about bullying the weak. He would kill Chu Xiao and Lu Fengxian as soon as he had the chance. Lu Fengxian's injuries were not light. It took her nearly a month to recuperate in the Guanzhong torture room. Even her foundation was slightly damaged. Originally, after he killed Meng Yuanlong, he was already seriously injured. However, at that time, LV Fengxian could still easily recover. In the end, because he forcibly killed Lu Qingfeng while he was seriously injured, it caused LV Fengxian's injuries to worsen. This time, it was a little too serious. Even though Chu Xiao did not lack elixirs, it still caused LV Fengxian's foundation to be damaged. Luckily, it was not too serious. In the future, if Lu Fengxian found some miraculous elixirs, or if he made a breakthrough in his physique refining technique, causing his body to become stronger, this level of damage could be made up for. After her injuries were healed, Lu Fengxian cupped her hands to Chu Xiao and said, "Brother Chu, thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I would have to stay in the Northern Yan forever." Chu Xiao waved his hand and said, "There's no need to thank me. Besides, I was the one who caused this." Lu Fengxian asked curiously. Oh? What do you mean? Chu Xiu recounted the grudge between him and Nie Donglu during the great battle between the righteous and demonic forces on Mount Fuyu before saying, Nie Donglu did not do anything to you even after you returned to Northern Yen for such a long time. But after the great battle on Mount Fuyu, he immediately began to frame you. Then, he quickly gathered his men to kill you. His actions were so coherent that anyone could understand what was going on. It's because he knows that you're my good friend and that you've displayed such great talent and strength that Nie Donglu wants to kill you and kill one of my helpers in advance. After hearing this, LV Fengxian could not help but sigh. She was still too inexperienced when it came to playing mind games with this group of people. Being chased all the way, LV Fengxian himself was confused. He didn't understand how he had suddenly become a killer who wanted to exterminate the Lu family and was being chased by the people of the righteous manor. Only now did Lu Fengxian realize that this was the reason. Lu Fengxian couldn't help but shake his head. When I was in the Northern Yen, I had a good impression of Nie Donglu. Even when we were chased out of Northern Yen by the Memorial Hall, it was only a conflict of interest. I didn't expect Nie Donglu to be so narrow-minded. He wanted to deal with you, Brother Chu, but now he's turned around and attacked me. This behavior is a bit too despicable and unbefitting of his identity. Chu Xiu said indifferently, for someone like Nie Donglu, reputation is just a fig leaf. As long as his goal is achieved, the process isn't important. Brother Lu, you've been in the Jianghu for so long, are you still not used to these things? Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly and shook his head. If people want to kill me, it's easy for me to kill them. But to be killed for such a strange reason, I still can't accept it. After complaining for a while, Lu Fengxian said to Chu Xiu, by the way, Brother Chu, do you still need people in the Guanzhong torture room? Chu Xiu was surprised. Why? You also want to join the Guanzhong torture room? If you are willing to join the Guanzhong punishment hall, I believe that Hall Master Guan will welcome you. After all, you are currently ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. For a faction to have 2 young elites ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, I believe that Hall Master Guan will welcome you. After killing Meng Yuanlong, Lu Fengxian was ranked 9th on the Longhu list. He was definitely a famous young talent in the Jianghu. If Guan Siyu didn't welcome such a person, then there would be a problem. Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, it's not me, it's my friends. They're all Northern Yen rogue cultivators, and they're not weak. I think they're qualified to join the Guanzhong torture room. The main thing is that they've already seriously offended the people of the morgue by helping me fend them off. I'm afraid they won't be able to return to the Northern Yen for the time being. This matter started because of me, so I'm going to help them find a way out for the time being. However, my connections are limited, so I can only trouble you, Brother Chu. Chu Xiu didn't even think about it and said, of course, no problem. I'll get someone to arrange it. The strength of Lu Fengxian's friends ranged from the inner invulnerability to the 3-flower realm. Although there were strong and weak ones, none of them were mediocre. Speaking of which, how many of those who were chosen by LV Fengxian and became friends with her were mediocre? They were only mediocre when compared to people like Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu. Compared to most of the leading martial artists in the Jianghu, their strength was still considered very strong. Moreover, even if these people were really mediocre, based on the fact that they were willing to accompany LV Fengxian all the way and not abandon her, this group of people was worthy of being taken in as subordinates, because such people would not betray. Moreover, the strength of these people was not weak. There were people from all walks of life among them. For example, Wang Shuangdong was the direct disciple of Du Bujiu, a famous poison master in the Northern Yen. He was very skilled in alchemy and poison refining. After Lu Fengxian called Wang Shuangdong and the others over, he pointed at Chu Xiu and said, everyone, I've dragged you into this time. Now that I've offended the morgue, I'm afraid I can't stay in the Northern Yen any longer. The morgue will also take out their anger on you, and you won't be able to return to the Northern Yen for the time being. Therefore, I recommended you to Brother Chu. If you're willing to join the Guanzhong torture room, Brother Chu will definitely not let you down. If you're not willing, I'll find another way out for you. Wang Shuangdong and the others looked at each other, nodded and said, since Brother Lu said so, then we'll do as you said. Wang Shuangdong and the others did not trust Chu Xiu, but Lu Fengxian. They simply believed that Lu Fengxian would not harm them. Moreover, they had seen Chu Xiu's strength and prestige. He was a torture officer of the Guanxi region, and he was ranked 6th on the Longhu list. Following Chu Xiu was not a disgrace to them. Wang Shuangdong and the others cupped their hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Greetings, official Chu." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "No need to be so courteous. You're all brother Lu's good friends, so naturally, you're also my brothers. I dare not say that I can give you a bright future, but at least I won't disgrace you." Saying this, Chu Xiu called the Ghost Hand King and had him bring Wang Shuangdong and the others to make arrangements. After making arrangements, Lu Fengxian said, "Brother Chu, since everything is settled here, I'll prepare to go to West Chu." Chu Xiu said in doubt, "Your injuries are not completely healed, why are you going to West Chu? Your foundation is damaged, so it's best for you to rest and see if you can make up for it when you break through." Lu Fengxian said, "I'm going to West Chu to prepare to treat my damaged foundation. When I was in West Chu, I met the divine doctor, Angry Yama, Feng Buping. I helped him a little and divine Dr. Feng is good to me. As long as I need it, he will treat me first. Now that my foundation is damaged, others can't do anything, but divine Dr. Feng should be able to, so I want to give it a try." Hearing Lu Fengxian say this, Chu Xiu was a bit speechless. In fact, LV Fengxian's greatest advantage wasn't his potential, nor was it his looks, but his abnormal luck. Lu Fengxian's luck had always been good. This was something Chu Xiu knew. Looking at it now, it was indeed the case. Angry Yama, Feng Buping had a great reputation in the Jianghu. He was known as the divine doctor of the Jianghu. He could cure all kinds of difficult and complicated illnesses. Even if you were half a step into the gates of hell, Feng Buping could pull you back, so his nickname was Angry Yama. But at the same time, although Feng Buping's medical skills were excellent, he was very greedy. To find him to cure a disease, for a normal martial artist, going bankrupt was considered light. Even if the disciples of the large sects came, they would have to bleed a lot. In the end, even if you wanted to bleed a lot for Feng Buping to cure you, Feng Buping might not have the time because there were too many people looking for him to cure. So at this time, he set a rule. Only those who he liked were qualified to bleed a lot, and those who he didn't like, even if they died, he wouldn't care. However, the more rules Feng Buping set, the more people looking for him to cure, as if he was really a divine doctor who could bring the dead back to life and grow flesh and bones. This kind of divine doctor that ordinary people couldn't even see once, but in the end, he had a friendship with Lu Fengxian, and even made a promise of this level. If this wasn't luck, then what was? Since it's like this, then I'll go. Brother Chu, if you're going to the memorial hall, don't forget to call me, I can make a move at any time. After chatting with Lu Fengxian for a while and escorting him out of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu was ready to go into seclusion again. However, before Chu Xiu was ready, someone sent a message, asking Chu Xiu to go to the Guanzhong torture room to see Mei Qinglian. Chu Xiu was a little surprised. This was the first time Mei Qinglian came to find him without informing him. In fact, when he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had already gone to see Guan Xiyu and Mei Qinglian, and told Mei Qinglian about the Northern Yan incident. In the end, Mei Qinglian still thought that Chu Xiu talked too long, so she only asked for the result. However, in the end, Mei Qinglian suddenly sent someone to find him, looking very anxious, which made Chu Xiu a little confused. When Chu Xiu arrived at the headquarters of the torture hall, it was night. Before Chu Xiu could go to find Mei Qinglian had already turned into Devil Qi and appeared in front of Chu Xiu openly. This time, Mei Qinglian didn't tease Chu Xiu. She just looked at Chu Xiu with a serious expression and said coldly, "Who are you?" Chapter 421. Mei Qinglian's attitude made Chu Xiu's heart skip a beat. However, his face remained calm as he asked with a smile, "I am who I am. Who else can I be?" Mei Qinglian approached Chu Xiu step by step. A rich yet not cloying fragrance wafted towards him. It was only when Mei Qinglian's beautiful face was less than 3 fingers away from Chu Xiu that she stopped. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not feel the fragrance. Instead, he felt a strong pressure coming towards him. It was the pressure of a martial Dao grandmaster. Mei Qinglian said in a low voice, "I always thought that I had seen through you, but now I realize that you haven't been telling me the truth from the beginning. Someone from the Yinma clan sent me a message saying that there's a rising star of the Devil Dao in Eastern Qi. He uses authentic devil arts and claims to be a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. He's the successor of Nangong Wuming, the Hall Master of the Devil Heart Hall. If he's the successor of Nangong Wuming, then who are you? Chu Xiu's heart trembled when he heard Mei Qinglian's words. However, he forced himself to maintain a calm expression on his face. In reality, a storm had already been set off in his heart. Chu Xiu was not afraid that someone would find out that he was the successor of the Kunlun Devil cult. This was because Chu Xiu knew that the authentic successor of the Devil Heart Hall would only appear in a few years. When that time came, he would find a chance to kill him. Dead men tell no tales, and the fake would become the real thing. But now, for some unknown reason, Nangong Wuming's legacy had been obtained by someone else in advance. As such, there were now 2 Nangong Wuming successors in the martial world. Even an idiot would know that something was wrong with the situation. Looking at Mei Qinglian, who was right in front of him, Chu Xiu knew that if he gave a wrong answer, the beautiful face in front of him would immediately turn murderous. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "In Eastern Qi, I joined hands with Mr. Lu to defeat Prince Anil Jiang Wenyuan. In the great battle of the righteous and demonic paths on Mount Fuyu, I represented the Yinma clan to show our might. Everyone in the Yinma clan knows that I, Chu Xiu, am a direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult. I was, and I will still be. As for that guy, he's just a nobody in the Jianghu. We can't just take whatever he says." Chu Xiu didn't answer whether his identity was real or not, but he believed that Mei Qinglian could understand what he meant. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu's identity was real or not, he had been wearing the identity of a direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult for such a long time. Everyone in the Yinma clan thought that he, Chu Xiu, was a rising star of the demonic path, and the future hope of the Yinma clan. Mei Qinglian thought so, the phaseless demon sect thought so, and even Wei Shuya, who was an old monster of the demonic path, thought so. If Chu Xiu's identity was exposed at this time, it would be a huge blow to the Yinma clan. It would also make the Bright Demon clan laugh at them for being blind. Just like Chu Xiu said, since Chu Xiu had worn this identity for such a long time, as long as it was in the past and in the future, there wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, who was that guy who claimed to be the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall? He was just a nobody in the Jianghu. But he, Chu Xiu, was a young hero with an outstanding reputation in the Jianghu. He was ranked 6th on the Dragon and Tiger list, and was enough to represent the demonic path and compete with the righteous heroes. The difference in status between the two was already so obvious. Whether they wanted a nobody to be the future hope of the Yinma clan, or whether they wanted Chu Xiu, a young hero ranked 6th on the Dragon and Tiger list, to stand on their side, this kind of choice was very easy to make. At this time, what the truth was no longer important. What was important was whether it was true or false, which was in line with the interests of Mei Qinglian, or in line with the interests of the entire Yinma clan. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, Mei Qinglian's expression was a little uncertain. After a long time, she took a step back and coldly snorted. "For the time being, only I know about this matter. The news should not have spread to the phaseless demon sect. You still have some time to clean your ass, otherwise, if things get out of hand, I won't be able to protect you. Also, remember this, I can tolerate this kind of thing once, but this is also the last time." After saying that, the black fog around Mei Qinglian's body flashed, and her figure disappeared from the room. Chu Xiu stood still, and after a long time, he sat back on the chair and let out a long breath. A layer of cold sweat had already appeared on his forehead. This time, Chu Xiu had indeed miscalculated, and it could be considered as giving Chu Xiu a profound lesson. The butterfly effect sounded simple, but it was the most unpredictable thing. Although he pretended to be the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall, it was only spread in a small area. The people who knew about it were only Mei Qinglian, Mr. Lu and a few others. He simply could not figure out why the descendant of the Demon Heart Hall, who was supposed to appear in the Jianghu several years later, would appear so early. Just now, it could be said that Chu Xiu really had a trip to the gates of hell, and this was not fake at all. Usually, Mei Qinglian's attitude towards Chu Xiu was not bad, and she would occasionally flirt with Chu Xiu. She would also generously agree to Chu Xiu's request, but that was based on the premise that Chu Xiu was on her side. But in reality, Mei Qinglian was still a sinister and ruthless holy maiden of the Yinma clan, a martial arts master of the Yinma clan. If Mei Qinglian firmly believed that Chu Xiu was lying to her, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could escape from Mei Qinglian's hands. Not to say that he would definitely die, he would at least die 9 times out of 10. But fortunately, Mei Qinglian was still rational, and Chu Xiu had also shown his value during this period of time. To be precise, it should be his value in the Yinma clan, so that he could be able to persuade Mei Qinglian to turn the fake into the real. It could be said that he was somewhat lucky. After sitting in the same place for a long time, Chu Xiu lightly spat out 4 words. Tread on thin ice. Chu Xiu's identity changed back and forth between the Orthodox Dao, the Devil Dao, and even the Yinma clan. It seemed that it was difficult to determine whether he was real or fake, but it was not invulnerable. At this time, what he needed to do was only 4 words. Tread on thin ice. However, during this period of time, Chu Xiu's life was a little too smooth. He had killed all the people he wanted to kill, and got all the things he wanted. This also led to an uncontrollable arrogant and lazy mood in Chu Xiu. To put it simply, he, Chu Xiu, had become arrogant. This was a very terrible mood, unconsciously affecting Chu Xiu, and even he himself did not notice it. If this sudden incident had not completely awakened Chu Xiu, he was afraid that he would still be immersed in this mood. Maybe one day he would not be careful, and it would take his life. Chu Xiu was a human, not a god. As a human, he had all kinds of emotions, which affected his judgment and way of doing things. However, Chu Xiu had a rare advantage, which was that he knew his own limits and would examine himself. If he made a mistake, then he would find a way to make up for it. In the future, he would remember that he could not make the same mistake again. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu could not help but reveal a trace of coldness in his eyes. Now, what Chu Xiu had to do was to make up for the mistake he had made. In Mei Qinglian's words, Chu Xiu had to prepare to clean up his mess first, so that the matter would not become too big and be discovered by others. When the successor of the Demon Heart Hall suddenly appeared in Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu only sent someone to report to Guan Siyu, then led his men to Eastern Qi. Apart from Yin Batong, the other penal officers did not have any objections to Chu Xiu going out all the time. Even if Yin Batong had any objections, it was useless. Chu Xiu had already arranged for the entire Guanxi region to be properly governed, so what could he say? Moreover, this time, Chu Xiu did not take this matter seriously. He directly brought the experts under him, Wang Shuangdong, and the others who had just joined him, out, leaving only 30% of the people in the Guanxi region to maintain order. Eastern Qi was too big, so Chu Xiu did not know where the so-called successor of the Demon Heart Hall was. However, as long as one was in the Jianghu, it was very easy to find a person. There was someone who specialized in this kind of thing, and that was Wind Sweeping Tower. In the past, when Chu Xiu was being chased by the Morale Manor and the Northern Floating Snow City, these two factions had borrowed the power of Wind Sweeping Tower to investigate his whereabouts. At that time, it had indeed caused a lot of trouble for Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu did not have any hatred for Wind Sweeping Tower. Wind Sweeping Tower was just a simple wind organization. If you came to buy information, they would sell it. Simply put, Wind Sweeping Tower was just a tool. Even if Chu Xiu wanted to take revenge, he would only take revenge on the people holding the tool, not the tool itself. Wind Sweeping Tower had countless branches in the Jianghu. There was a branch in both northern Yan and West Chu, and its headquarters was in Nanliang City in Eastern Qi. There were 2 big cities in Eastern Qi that were the most prosperous. One was naturally the capital, Great Liang City, and the other was the former capital, Nanliang City. Moving the capital was a very serious matter, but hundreds of years ago, the imperial family of Eastern Qi seemed to have gone crazy. They had invited the Taoist masters from the Zhanwu cult, Chunyang Dao sect, and the Taoist master mansion of Longhu Mountain to check the geomancy of the imperial family of Eastern Qi. In the end, they came to the conclusion that the geomancy of Nanliang City was not good, so they hurriedly moved the capital to Great Liang City. Putting aside whether the experts from the 3 major Taoist sects could see the geomancy, Eastern Qi had been established in Nanliang City for such a long time, and now they said that the geomancy was not good. Who was the one who checked the geomancy when the capital was first built? In short, the people of Eastern Qi had thought that the imperial family of Eastern Qi was crazy. But since the capital had been moved, the people of Eastern Qi had gotten used to it. As for the original capital, Nanliang City, it did not decline. It was still prosperous and could even be compared with Great Liang City. The headquarters of Wind Sweeping Tower was located in Nanliang City. Every day, countless Jianghu information would be sent to Nanliang City in great detail. Even the vegetarian meal of the Great Guangming Temple today was recorded in the information. Of course, Ordinary people would not buy such boring information. Chapter 422. In Nanliang City, Chu Xiu brought Tang Ya and Yan Bugui into the city and headed straight for the headquarters of Wind Sweeping Building. Eastern Qi wasn't Chu Xiu's territory after all. He had brought a few hundred men with him. It would be fine if they were scattered, but it would be too conspicuous if they were to enter Nanliang City as a group. The headquarters of Wind Sweeping Building was located in the south of Nanliang City. The people around it were mostly people of the pugilistic world. Of course, there were only two types of people. One was the anemophilia who sold information, and the other was the people of the pugilistic world who came to buy information. The headquarters of Wind Sweeping Building was very magnificent. It was a 9-story building. In the pugilistic world, a 9-story building wasn't that tall. However, Wind Sweeping Building's 9-story building was taller than a 10-story building. The space on each floor was frighteningly spacious. The entire building wasn't made of wood. It was made of a stone that looked like white jade. There were countless patterns of astrology and divination carved on it. It looked extremely profound. As soon as Chu Xiu stepped into Wind Sweeping Building, a martial artist from Wind Sweeping Building immediately noticed Chu Xiu. He paused for a moment before a bright smile appeared on his face. He walked over and said, "So it's Chu Xiu from Guangzhong Torture Room, Official Chu. What information would Official Chu like to buy? Please come upstairs." These disciples who welcomed guests in Wind Sweeping Building were famous for being quick-witted. It was a basic skill for them to be able to recognize the appearance and identity of a martial artist on the Dragon and Tiger list within 10 breaths of time. Some of them could even determine one's background from one's strength, appearance, clothes, and habits of speech. It was very terrifying. The disciple led Chu Xiu to a guest room on the 6th floor. He asked respectfully, "May I ask what kind of information Official Chu would like to buy? Is it related to a sect or an individual?" "Official Chu, please don't worry. Although the people of Wind Sweeping Building reveal the most secrets, they also have professional ethics. Those secrets were sold to us, not extracted from the mouths of our customers." Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "I am looking for information on a person, a small fry who has just made a name for himself in Eastern Qi. Everything about him and his exact location." The martial artist in charge of welcoming the guests nodded and said, "Please wait for a moment, Official Chu. I will bring someone over." With that, the martial artist who welcomed the guests pushed the door open and walked out. However, as soon as he walked out, he bumped into a middle-aged martial artist in his 50s dressed in black. The middle-aged martial artist had a squarish appearance, but there was a slender red mark between his eyebrows. It looked like a third eye and was extremely strange. Seeing that person, the welcoming martial artist hurriedly said, "Greetings, Lord Qi." This martial artist was none other than the Northern Yen Vice Pavilion Master of Wind Sweeping Pavilion, the three-eyed god Qi Yuanli. He was the one who had stood up against the majority and arranged for Chu Xiu to be on the Longhu list. Qi Yuanli had been a little lazy when he was in Northern Yen, and he believed in the rule of non-interference. He did not expect that the Northern Yen branch of Wind Sweeping Building would develop so well. Because of this, Qi Yuanli was promoted and transferred from the Northern Yen branch to the headquarters of Eastern Qi as the Vice Pavilion Master. Although his position did not change, he had been in the Northern Yen branch, and now he was in the headquarters of Eastern Qi. Qi Yuanli's power had risen by more than one level. Qi Yuanli nodded and asked subconsciously, "Since he was brought to the 6th floor, who is here to buy information?" Wind Sweeping Building was also divided into levels. If you wanted to buy some general information, you could directly go to the lower 3 floors for public trading. The 4th, 5th, and 6th floors were only open to the big shots in Jianghu, and there were special guest rooms for guests to keep their secrets. The martial artist who welcomed the guests said, "It's Chu Xiu, the Guangzhong Torture Room's chief torture officer of Guanxi. He wants to find detailed information about a person." With Qi Yuanli's lazy personality, he had originally planned to ask and then leave, but he did not expect the person to be Chu Xiu. This suddenly piqued Qi Yuanli's interest, because he was the one who personally selected Chu Xiu to be on the Longhu list, and now Chu Xiu's growth had somewhat exceeded his expectations. In fact, when Qi Yuanli first listed Chu Xiu on the Longhu list, and very coincidentally, he was ranked above by Wuji from the Drifting Snow City in the far north. Part of the reason was to annoy the Drifting Snow City. After all, at that time, the The drifting snow city in the far north was a little difficult for the wind-sweeping building to collect information. Qi Yuanli was actually a little narrow-minded, and the wind-sweeping building was not good at combat, so he could only slightly annoy the people from the drifting snow city in this aspect. After all, things like rankings could not be very strict. It was still acceptable to change the rankings after all. There were some extremely famous big shots in it, but as for the Longhu list, as long as it was not too outrageous, it was only a matter of the wind-sweeping building moving their lips. Now that he knew that Chu Xiao happened to be in the wind-sweeping building, Qi Yuanli was quite curious about him. He directly said to the martial artist who welcomed the guest, "All right, you don't have to worry about it, I will personally deal with this guest." Although the martial artist was a little puzzled as to why Qi Yuanli suddenly came to greet a guest today, he did not ask much and just nodded and left. Qi Yuanli pushed the door open and entered. When Chu Xiao looked up, he was immediately stunned. The person in front of him did not conceal his aura, and he was a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse. Was his status already so high that it was worthy for a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse to personally welcome him? Qi Yuanli smiled and said, "My name is Qi Yuanli, the deputy leader of the Wind-Sweeping Building's Eastern Qi headquarters. Speaking of which, Chu and I are fated to meet. Back when you first entered the Longhu list, I was the deputy leader of the Northern Yen branch when I was personally nominated and recommended you." When Chu Xiao heard that, he immediately stood up and cupped his hands, saying, "So there's such a past. I have to thank Tower Leader Qi for supporting me back then, or I, Chu Xiao, would not have a reputation in the pugilistic world today." When Qi Yuanli heard that, he smiled and waved his hand, saying, Deputy, there's only one leader of the wind-sweeping building, and it's not me. Also, Chu, you don't have to be so humble. The sharpness of a sword won't always be hidden in its sheath. If you have the strength, we will recommend you to enter the Longhu list. On the contrary, if you don't have the strength, even if we let you enter the list, you won't be able to stay on the list for long. Therefore, everything that you have now, Chu, was fought for by yourself. We, the wind-sweeping building, will only ensure fairness. By the way, Chu, what information are you here to buy this time?" Chu Xiao said in a deep voice. "It's like this. Recently, someone in Eastern Qi has announced that he's the successor of the Kunlun Devil Cult's Demon Heart Hall. The battle between the righteous and demonic factions on Floating Jade Mountain has just ended, and there's already someone jumping around like a clown. It's really despicable. Although the Guanzhong torture room isn't part of the righteous path, we don't want the underworld to be ruled by the demonic path. Therefore, we have to do our part to exterminate the demonic path. This time, I've brought people here to kill this evil clown." Qi Yuanli smiled. He had been in the wind-sweeping building for his entire life and was an experienced person. What had he not seen? It was very normal for people like Chu Xiao to find a dignified reason before doing something. Therefore, Qi Yuanli didn't expose him. Instead, he called for a warrior and asked him to bring the information over. A moment later, a warrior brought a jade book and handed it to Qi Yuanli. This jade book was really made of jade, and it was densely engraved with runes. There weren't many pages, only less than 10. As Qi Yuanli's mental strength seeped into the jade book, countless information immediately surged into his mind. There was too much information in the wind-sweeping building, so much so that some of the information couldn't be recorded with words. Therefore, the wind-sweeping building invented this jade book. Its principle was exactly the same as the cultivation transmission jade slip, but the content it could contain was 100 or even 1,000 times more than the cultivation transmission jade slip. However, this thing had a huge impact on one's mental strength. In the wind-sweeping building, only warriors who were one with heaven and man and above were qualified to use it. After a while, Qi Yuanli closed the jade book and said in a low voice, "I found the information you wanted. It's very interesting." The guy who claimed to be the successor of the demonic heart hall was called Xiaofan. He was a rogue warrior from the Liang County of Eastern Qi. He had the cultivation of the internal invulnerability realm, and was once a follower of the Prince and Lu residence. However, after the Prince and Lu residence was exterminated by the Eastern Qi's royal family, Xiaofan escaped from the Prince and Lu residence. However, no one took him seriously. 2 months ago, this guy came out of nowhere and learned a powerful demonic art. He claimed to be the direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult, but no one took him seriously. However, this guy's strength has definitely increased. As soon as he came out, He had the strength of the three-flower realm. He went to seek revenge on several enemies that he had grudges with in the past. He's a vengeful person. The latest news is that this kid is now looking for a backer. I heard that he contacted the people of the Evil Pole sect through some unknown channel. It seems that he's ready to join the Evil Pole sect. After listening to Qi Yuanli, Chu Xiu breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the original plot, things had changed a lot. This was because the guy who obtained the inheritance of the demonic heart hall in the original plot was not called Zhang Chufan. Moreover, that person had the cultivation of one with heaven and man as soon as he was born, instead of just at the three-flower realm. Now, Chu Xiu was sure that it was indeed because of his influence that the inheritance of the demonic heart hall was born in advance. If it were not for Chu Xiu's intervention, Prince and Lu residence, Jiang Wenyuan would not have died so early. Now, Zhang Chufan would definitely still be in the Prince and Lu residence as his guest. As a result, the Prince and Lu residence was now empty. This Zhang Chufan was so lucky that he was able to obtain the inheritance of the demonic heart hall. However, this guy was not far from death, because he was too high profile. This Zhang Chufan was only a rogue cultivator. He did not know the taboo and horror of the Kunlun devil cult. Yet, he still dared to announce that he was the direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. Even if Chu Xiu did not make a move, he would still be killed if he made a big deal out of it. Chapter 423. It was the same opportunity, but everyone had different choices. From Chu Xiu's point of view, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall was the kind of person who didn't have high standards and liked to seek death subconsciously. In the original plot, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall could be considered a character. He used his identity to create a storm between the righteous and demonic sections. However, this person seemed to be a little too petty. His strength wasn't that great yet, but he had already started to show off in the pugilistic world. Little did he know that the bird that stuck its head out would be shot. The more arrogant one was in the pugilistic world, the faster one would die. Of course, Chu Xiu might have to thank this guy called Zhang Chufan for being so high profile. If it wasn't for the fact that he started to be so high profile and arrogant when he just had a bit of strength and opportunity, someone with good intentions wouldn't have passed the news to Mei Qinglian. If he was really a low-profile person, he would wait until he cultivated to a certain realm and created a storm in the pugilistic world. By then, Chu Xiu would be in danger. Chu Xiu asked Qi Yuanli, "Tower Master Qi, do you know where he is now?" Qi Yuanli shrugged and said, "He's just a nobody. Wind-sweeping tower naturally wouldn't waste our energy to track him down. However, he should still be in Luan County. If you need, I can use the power of wind-sweeping tower to help you search. I'll give you the news within 3 days." To wind-sweeping tower, although Zhang Chufan claimed to be the successor of the Demon Heart Hall, in the eyes of a power like wind-sweeping tower, the Kunlun devil cult was a taboo. If anyone obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun devil cult, they definitely wouldn't be able to hide. Why would they jump out and make a big fuss about it? Therefore, regardless of whether it was Qi Yuanli or an Emophilia who collected the information about Zhang Chufan, they really thought that Zhang Chufan was a clown who got carried away after obtaining a bit of opportunity and bragged to attract attention. However, who would have thought that this weirdo really obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun devil cult? A bright light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he shook his head. "There's no need, I will do it myself. Tower Lord Qi, how much is the fee for this information?" Qi Yuanli waved his hand and said, "It's just an ordinary piece of news from an insignificant person. Something that can be bought with ordinary money isn't worth much. Forget about the fees." Hearing Qi Yuanli's words, Chu Xiu didn't act pretentious. He cupped his hands towards Qi Yuanli and said, "In that case, many thanks to Tower Master Qi. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning." Qi Yuanli waved his hand casually. Wind Sweeping Tower was an absolutely neutral organization in Jianghu. They were completely businessmen. As long as you had money, you could buy and sell information from them. With Chu Xiu's potential, Qi Yuanli did not mind forming a good relationship with Chu Xiu. After exiting Wind Sweeping Tower, Tanya stood behind Chu Xiu and asked, "My lord, should we make our move now?" Chu Xiu nodded expressionlessly and said, "Of course, we can't afford to delay any longer. Immediately tell Ghost Hand King and the others to gather people and prepare to make a move. Immediately enter Leping Prefecture. Leping Prefecture is a prefecture of eastern Qi. It's not a small area, but it's not small either. If we make a move together, it'll be easy for someone to escape. So we'll temporarily split up our forces and search around Leping Prefecture. When you find the target, don't inform me. Wait for my order and you can directly make your move. Remember, don't worry about life or death. It's good to be alive, but it's also good to be dead. If Zhang Chuhan was captured alive, Chu Xiu was also prepared to interrogate him about the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall. It would be best if he could obtain the inheritance from his mouth. Then, even if Chu Xiu was a fake, it would become real. And if it really couldn't be done, then it didn't matter if he died. After all, if he really died, the fake Chu Xiu could also become real. Yan Bugui nodded and habitually prepared to make a move to kill, but was stopped by Tangya. I say, why are you in such a hurry? We haven't asked clearly yet. Tangya complained to Yan Bugui, then turned to Chu Xiu and asked, Your Excellency, this Leping Prefecture is not our territory. What if we have a conflict with the local martial arts forces when we make a move? Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of coldness and said seriously, I must take Zhang Chufan's life. I'll kill whoever gets in my way. There are no top martial arts forces in Jianghu in Leping Prefecture. If something happens, I can handle it. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Tangya immediately understood. After giving some instructions, he directly turned around and left with Yan Bugui. Tangya liked the decisive character of Chu Xiu. Since he was ready to kill, then he should do it openly and happily. It was too unpleasant to have scruples about this and that. It was satisfying to work with such a superior. At least Tangya was very satisfied. In the White Mountain Prefecture of Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan was in the main hall of the Lin family in the White Mountain Prefecture. But he was sitting on the main seat of the Lin family's main hall like a guest, with his legs crossed and an arrogant posture. Zhang Chufan was not very old, only in his 30s. His appearance could be regarded as handsome, but at this time the arrogance on his face could not be concealed. In the past in Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan was also a figure. After all, he was a rogue cultivator. It was not easy for him to reach the Xiantian realm at such a young age with his own strength. So at that time, Zhang Chufan was qualified to be a right-hand man in Prince Annal's mansion. After all, when Jiang Wenyuan was at his peak, not everyone could be a right-hand man in Prince Annal's mansion. Unfortunately, an accident happened in Prince Annal's mansion. Jiang Wenyuan was killed, and Prince Annal's mansion also fell apart overnight. Zhang Chufan became a stray dog again. But who would have thought that there would always be a way out? He, Zhang Chufan, was indeed a person with great luck. The inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall under the ancient Kunlun demon cult was actually obtained by him. Just as Chu Xiu had guessed, after Zhang Chufan had obtained the Demon Heart Hall's legacy, he had no idea what it meant given his insight and knowledge. Zhang Chufan only knew that the Kunlun devil cult used to sweep the whole Jianghu and was very strong. So he subconsciously thought that the identity of the successor of the Devil Heart Hall was very valuable, and he became a person with a backer. At the same time that he had a backer, Zhang Chufan began to publicize this matter with great fanfare. He really thought that his identity was great. In the eyes of other big sects, Zhang Chufan was just a clown. Except for a few people, no one would believe that he had the so-called cultivation method. However, in Leping Prefecture, Zhang Chufan's reputation and strength were still very useful. During this period of time, Zhang Chufan had been swaggering around Leping Commandery. He took in some of his former friends as his subordinates, and then went to seek revenge on the people and forces who had enmity with him in the past. It could be said that he was very carefree and unrestrained. However, those forces did not know whether it was because they really thought that Zhang Chufan was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, or simply did not want to completely fall out with Zhang Chufan, so they endured it, just like the Lin family now. At this time, the master of the Lin family was standing in the hall with a humiliated face. He snorted coldly and said, Zhang Chufan, I have given you what you want. What do you want now? The Lin family was a big family in the whole White Mountain Prefecture, but in fact, it was not ranked in the whole Leping Prefecture. The master of the Lin family only had the strength of the inner gang realm. The master of the Lin family did not know what other people thought. He only knew that his family completely could not defeat Zhang Chufan, so they admitted defeat. Otherwise, how could he let Zhang Chufan be so arrogant? At this time, hearing the words of the master of the Lin family, Zhang Chufan suddenly sneered and said, "What do I want? I just want to take back all the things that I lost in the past." In the past, in your Lin family's marriage contest, I was obviously the winner, but because I was only a rogue cultivator, not an aristocratic family, you broke your promise. Not only did you not marry your daughter to me, but you also did not even give me the prize of the winner. You only gave me a few meat-steamed buns to send me away. Do you really think that I am a beggar? Now that your precious daughter has long been married to an old man, she is already old and yellow. I don't want her even if you give her to me for free. Now I just want 10 times the reward that you prepared as a dowry. Is that too much? Doesn't your Lin family still have 1,000 leaves violet orchid? Take it to me as interest, is that too much? Zhang Chufan's words almost made the master of the Lin family faint. If Zhang Chufan wanted some compensation, the Lin family could still afford it. But Zhang Chufan opened his mouth and asked for 10 times the previous dowry. He even wanted the 1,000 leaves violet orchid that the Lin family had secretly cultivated with great difficulty, and could increase a cultivator's lifespan. This was simply preparing to take the life of the Lin family. Seeing that the master of the Lin family still wanted to say something, Zhang Chufan's face immediately darkened and said, "I do not want to say the same thing a second time. These things, are you going to hand over or not?" The master of the Lin family gritted his teeth and said, "Hand over." People under eaves had no choice but to lower their heads. Right now, Zhang Chufan was a vile person, and the master of the Lin family was very helpless. If he did not hand it over, the other party could very well slaughter the Lin family, and he would also have a good excuse. Of course, if Chu Xiao was here, he would definitely also disdain Zhang Chufan's vile appearance. There was not so much trouble in dealing with an old enemy. Either he did not do it or he did it to the extreme. If it was Chu Xiao, he would either not make a move against the Lin family, or he would make a move against the Lin family. In the face of absolute strength, it would be best to directly slaughter the Lin family, lest there would be people who would hate him. If he killed all his enemies, then there would be no more enemies. But this time, Zhang Chufan did not seem to be here for revenge, but to be here to show off. After all, it was better to not return to one's hometown when one was rich. Chapter 424. Looking at the sullen face of the Lin family patriarch, who dared to be angry but did not dare to speak, Zhang Chufan's heart was filled with joy. Ever since he stood out among the group of rogue cultivators when he was young and successfully joined Prince and Li's residence as a guardian, Zhang Chufan knew that he was not an ordinary person. He was different from those guys who could only roll around at the bottom of Jianghu for their entire lives. Sooner or later, he would make a name for himself. Now, this opportunity had come. He, Zhang Chufan, was really a person blessed with great luck. Just as Chu Xiao had guessed, with Zhang Chufan's background, he had only heard some legends about the Kunlun devil cult. He did not know the details of the war in the past or the various taboos of the Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, until now, Zhang Chufan still thought that he had become the successor of the Kunlun devil cult. He was like the protagonist of some Jianghu legends, who accidentally jumped off a cliff and obtained a godly inheritance. From then on, his women would take the initiative to throw themselves at him, and he would become the future supreme master of Jianghu. This inflated mentality made Zhang Chufan feel a little smug. Therefore, during this period of time, he had been flaunting his strength in Lepian Commandery and waiting for the arrival of the evil Pole sect. Qi Yuanli's information stated that he was in contact with the evil Pole sect, but in fact, he was not the one who took the initiative to contact the evil Pole sect. Instead, it was the evil Pole sect who took the initiative to contact him, preparing to accept him into the evil Pole sect. Zhang Chufan thought that it was his identity that caused the evil Pole sect to treat him as a young master and train him with all their might. After all, in the legends of Jianghu, the Kunlun devil cult used to dominate the world. Sects like the evil Pole sect used to be consumed by the Kunlun devil cult. However, Zhang Chufan did not know that in the war that destroyed the Kunlun devil cult, the evil Pole sect had become a traitor. Moreover, the evil Pole sect had Yi Tianxia, a genius who successfully cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra as a human. Not to mention that Zhang Chufan was only a successor of the Demon Heart Hall. Even if he was the successor of Duge Wei Wei, it would still be useless. However, right at this moment, a commotion broke out from outside. More than 10 martial artists had barged into the Lin family. Their strength was so strong that the Lin family couldn't defend against them at all. The young warrior in the lead carried a heavy sword on his back. His expression was cold, and there seemed to be no focus in his eyes. However, his three-flower realm strength was unusually solid, giving Zhang Chufan a heavy pressure. This young martial artist was Yan Bu Gui. Chu Xiao and his subordinates divided into several groups, and began to search and kill around Lepiang County. Yan Bu Gui's luck wasn't bad. Zhang Chufan's Lin family was located in the direction he was searching. Zhang Chufan didn't try to conceal his whereabouts, so Yan Bu Gui was able to find out Zhang Chufan's location very quickly. Lepiang County was not considered a major county in eastern Qi, so the strength of a county was limited. Those in the three-flower realm were already considered experts in Lepiang County. Otherwise, Zhang Chufan would not have been able to act so arrogantly for so long. However, Zhang Chufan had never seen or even heard of this person before. Zhang Chufan couldn't help but frown. "Who are you? Are you here to cause trouble for the Lin family?" When Yan Bu Gui appeared with his men, Zhang Chufan subconsciously thought that they were here to cause trouble for the Lin family and not for him. At that moment, Yan Bu Gui looked at Zhang Chufan expressionlessly and said, "Are you Zhang Chufan?" Zhang Chufan nodded subconsciously and said, "Yes, I am. Are you here for me?" However, before Zhang Chufan could react, Yan Bu Gui had already grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword on Zhang Chufan's back. In an instant, a violent gust of earth energy whistled over. The power of the sword was as terrifying as Mount Tai, pressuring Zhang Chufan to the point that he couldn't breathe. At this critical moment, Zhang Chufan let out a furious roar. His hands danced in the air, and the sinister and cold devil qi condensed into countless threads, like the strings of a zither. As his hands moved, the pitch-black devil qi instantly roared out, shaking Yan Bu Gui's sword. Although it had successfully reduced the power of Yan Bu Gui's sword by more than half, Zhang Chufan himself was forced back several steps by the force of the sword, and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Although the inheritance of skills was important, the martial artist himself was more important. Otherwise, even if a good-for-nothing had a divine skill, he wouldn't be able to practice it. Zhang Chufan was in the inner aura realm before. With the help of some treasures in the Demon Heart Hall, his strength quickly soared to the three-flower realm, which was equivalent to directly crossing a realm. This caused his foundation to be unstable, and he couldn't compare to Yan Bu Gui at all. Even if he had the secret skills of the Kunlun Devil Cult, he couldn't withstand more than a few moves from Yan Bu Gui. Looking at Yan Bu Gui in front of him, Zhang Chufan seemed to still be in a state of confusion. He shouted, "Who are you? Why are you attacking me?" However, Yan Bu Gui didn't answer him. Instead, he followed up with another powerful slash. The power was majestic, and it was incomparably strong. It was directly aimed at Zhang Chufan's life. Chu Xiao's request was for Zhang Chufan to be alive. Of course, a dead body was fine as well. However, he ignored the first half of Yan Bu Gui's words. He only knew that killing was enough. Therefore, Yan Bu Gui attacked with a killing move, not giving Zhang Chufan a chance to speak at all. Seeing that Yan Bu Gui's sword was coming for him again, Zhang Chufan shouted, "Run!" In fact, before he was ready to run, his subordinates were already so scared that their legs turned to jelly, and they were ready to retreat first. Zhang Chufan used to be a loner. It wasn't until he obtained an opportunity that he recruited his old gang of scoundrels to be his subordinates. It was fine for these people to follow behind him like a fox using the tiger's power, but to go through thick and thin with him, it was better off. Zhang Chufan's hands formed a seal, and suddenly, a turbulent demonic aura erupted. However, it was directly cut into pieces by Yan Bu Gui's sword. However, at this moment, an ear-piercing roar suddenly sounded in Yan Bu Gui's ears, causing his body to pause for a moment, and the huge sword in his hand was directly slashed to the side. By the time Yan Bu Gui returned to normal, Zhang Chufan and the others had already escaped from the back door. Yan Bu Gui rubbed his head, and his eyes revealed a hint of coldness as he said, "Chase!" On a small hill outside of the White Mountain Prefecture, Zhang Chufan's face was filled with fear. It was obvious that the two sword strikes from Yan Bu Gui had given him a huge psychological trauma. This also caused Zhang Chufan's arrogant heart to be splashed with a bucket of cold water after he obtained the inheritance. This also allowed him to know the extent of his strength. "Have you guys heard of who that guy is?" Why does he want to kill me? Zhang Chufan asked his subordinates. His subordinates shook their heads and one of them said, "This person's strength is so valiant, and that heavy sword is even more conspicuous. If he is from Leping Prefecture, there is no reason for us not to know him. He should be from some other place. Could it be that he was hired by someone to deal with Big Brother Zhang?" Zhang Chufan thought for a moment. During this period of time in Leping Prefecture, he seemed to have really offended a lot of people, and some of them were quite serious. These people seemed to have a reason to hire someone to kill him. For a moment, Zhang Chufan really couldn't think of who it was that wanted to kill him. Zhang Chufan clenched his fist and said fiercely, "Don't let me know who this person is, or else I will wring his head." "Big Brother Zhang, what should we do now?" someone asked. Zhang Chufan thought for a moment and said, "Let's change direction, cover up our tracks, and go to Kaiping Prefecture to find our brothers. If that guy with the heavy sword dares to come again, I will make sure that he won't be able to return." Although Zhang Chufan was a despicable person who was intoxicated by success, he was really good to his former friends. Now that he had made a fortune, those friends who followed him in the past had naturally followed suit, showing off their strength in Leping Prefecture. Kaiping Prefecture was Zhang Chufan's hometown. His subordinates, as well as all kinds of property and resources he had extorted during this period, were also stored in Kaiping Prefecture. All the way to Kaiping Prefecture with his people, Zhang Chufan felt a little strange. He had hundreds of subordinates in Kaiping Prefecture, but now there was no one in the prefecture's mansion. Moreover, when the other warriors in Kaiping Prefecture saw Zhang Chufan, they all had a strange look on their faces. When they saw him, it was as if they had seen some kind of plague, and they all avoided him. Zhang Chufan frowned all the way to his home. It was his mansion, which used to belong to the Wang family of Kaiping Prefecture, but he was also bullied by the Wang family when he was a child. At this time, he forced the Wang family to hand over their family property and mansion, and even directly drove the Wang family out of Kaiping Prefecture. As soon as he came to the door, Zhang Chufan felt that something was wrong, but he still subconsciously opened the door. In an instant, the pungent smell of blood hit his nose. In the courtyard, all his subordinates had been killed, and the corpses were neatly arranged in the shape of a mouth, and the whole courtyard had been dyed red with blood. More than a dozen warriors in black stood next to it, and in the center was a young man in a golden robe with a gentle smile on his face. He was still playing with a delicate dragon tail soul-chasing dart in his hand. When he saw Zhang Chufan, he greeted him, "You're back." Tang Ye's tone was very gentle, as if he was an old friend who had not seen him for a long time and was greeting him. But coupled with the current scene, it made Zhang Chufan feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. Tang Ye was much smarter than Yen Bugue. He was not like Yen Bugue, who only sent people to search honestly. Tang Ye directly inquired about the location of Zhang Chufan's lair, and then brought people to slaughter Zhang Chufan's lair, and then waited here. Although he was waiting for a rabbit to come to him, but the chance of waiting was still very high, and now it seemed that it was really so. Of course, Tang Ye's action in the eyes of his subordinates was purely because their master was slacking off, and was too lazy to run back and forth looking for people. Tang Ye and his men had slaughtered hundreds of people in a row. In broad daylight, it was impossible for the people in Kaiping Prefecture not to notice, but they did not even send a message to Zhang Chufan. One could imagine how bad Zhang Chufan's reputation in his hometown was. Of course, it was also possible that these people were frightened by Tang Ye's methods, and did not dare to send a message. Chapter 425. Looking at his subordinates being slaughtered, Zhang Chufan's heart was filled with anger, fear, and many other emotions. But what Zhang Chufan wanted to know the most was who these people were, and why there were people chasing after him everywhere. "Who the hell sent you? Why do you want to kill me?" Zhang Chufan shouted at Tang Ye. Tang Ye shook his head and said, "It's rare for a person to be muddle-headed. Why do you need to know so much? Why don't we make a deal? You obediently surrender, I won't kill the people around you, and I can let you suffer less. What do you think?" He was different from Yen Bugue's simple and crude stubbornness. Although Tang Ye seemed to be more lazy on normal days, as long as Chu Xiu gave him a task, he would be able to complete it perfectly. For example, this time, although Chu Xiu said it didn't matter if Zhang Chufan was dead or alive, but he said it was better to live, so Tang Ye was prepared to capture him alive and complete the task perfectly. Zhang Chufan gritted his teeth, and his figure quickly fled outside. Seeing this scene, Tanya shook his head and said, "What a pity, it seems that you have made a wrong choice." As his voice fell, countless hidden weapons in Tanya's hands attacked Zhang Chufan like a torrential rain, but under the control of Tanya's Gang Qi, these hidden weapons did not aim at Zhang Chufan's vital parts. After all, he was prepared to capture him alive. Zhang Chufan did not need to turn his head to feel the terror of the overwhelming hidden weapons behind him. He formed a seal with his hands, and in an instant, boundless devil qi shrouded behind him, only to hear a series of explosions. No matter how much devil qi he had, his strength was not as strong as Tanya, and was still shattered. The two curved blades in Tanya's hands combined into one, like a full moon, and suddenly shot out, surrounded by Gang Qi, looking extremely terrifying. The whistling wind came, Zhang Chufan gritted his teeth, he suddenly moved, and several palms fell, but he did not attack Tanya, but the people around him. Zhang Chufan's subordinates did not expect that Zhang Chufan would suddenly attack them. After all, Zhang Chufan had always been good to them. In a moment of carelessness, the few of them were pushed back and were directly cut into two by Tanya's full moon chakram. There was no fluctuation in Zhang Chufan's eyes. He was a selfish person. At this critical moment, he couldn't care less about his brothers and subordinates. Of course, his life was more important. Seeing this scene, Tanya couldn't help but shake his head and say, "You betrayed your own people. You're really quick, like someone from the demonic path. But unfortunately, your resistance is futile." As soon as he finished speaking, Tanya's figure became like a willow catkin as he moved against the wind. His figure was light, but his speed was fast to the extreme. He had almost caught up to Zhang Chufan in an instant. Zhang Chufan was also shocked by Tanya's series of changes. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else. He directly formed a seal with both hands, and in an instant, a force of qi and blood mixed with devil qi burned in his body. His speed instantly rose to the extreme. His figure was like a blood-red rainbow, and he disappeared in an instant. Tanya's figure stopped in place, and a look of shock appeared on his face. He was best at speed, so he was only prepared to capture Zhang Chufan alive. He didn't even consider that Zhang Chufan would escape. He didn't expect that he would miscalculate this time. Zhang Chufan actually had such a trump card, which was somewhat beyond Tanya's expectations. However, Tanya didn't care. At first glance, this kind of cultivation method needed to burn qi and blood or pay a certain price to be used. After using it, Zhang Chufan would definitely be seriously injured. And official Chu had already set up an inescapable net in the entire Leping prefecture, constantly strangling people. Zhang Chufan couldn't escape. At this time, Zhang Chufan had already appeared more than 10 miles away. At this time, his appearance was extremely miserable. His face was pale, and blood was flowing from his mouth and nose. Obviously, he was seriously injured. He had obtained a lot of cultivation techniques from the Devil Path inheritance, but Zhang Chufan was still relatively cautious at that time. The first thing he learned was internal strength, and the second was the blood escape technique. The effect of using it to escape was very outstanding. Of course, the consumption was not ordinary. The blood escape technique used the power of qi and blood as fuel. The further one escaped, the greater the loss of one's own qi and blood. Zhang Chufan was frightened by Tanya, so he directly fled more than 10 miles away before stopping the blood escape technique. But at this time, he was seriously injured. Taking out a few medicinal pills and throwing them into his mouth to refine, Zhang Chufan's complexion slightly improved. These medicinal pills were also found in the demonic inheritance, and they were all high-quality products with wonderful effects. However, at this time, Zhang Chufan was also thinking about who was trying to kill him. He was not an idiot. Naturally, he could see that the heavy sword user and the concealed weapon user were basically a group of people, and they were all targeting him. Previously, Zhang Chufan thought that these people had offended some force and were hired by them to kill him. But then Zhang Chufan felt that something was wrong. Because the forces he had offended were definitely not as strong as him, and under Zhang Chufan's coercion, they had already submitted. If this group of people had such strong power and could hire such a terrifying opponent, then he would not have been able to deal with them in the past. Thinking about it, Zhang Chufan did not understand what was going on, but at this time, the most important thing for him to think about was how to escape. Now there were two groups of people chasing him, and he was seriously injured, so Zhang Qiufan must find a safer place. After thinking for a long time, Zhang Qiufan decided to go to the center of Leping Commandery, Antai Prefecture, to seek shelter from the Yang family of Antai Prefecture. The Yang family of Antai Prefecture was the largest family in Antai Prefecture, and there was more than one martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm in the family. Zhang Qiufan had no grievances with the Yang family before, so this time, even if he obtained the opportunity, he did not dare to offend the Yang family. Moreover, he was just a little arrogant, not an idiot. The Yang family had a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, and he would be courting death if he offended the Yang family. The most important thing was that the evil extreme sect had contacted him, asking him to join the evil extreme sect, and one of the messengers was the Yang family. It was said that although the Yang family was not a demonic path, one of their disciples had become an inner sect disciple of the evil extreme sect, and it was because of this relationship that the Yang family would send messages for the evil extreme sect. From Zhang Qiufan's point of view, he was already prepared to join the extreme evil sect. The Yang clan would naturally give him face. Moreover, with the Yang clan's strength, they had so many Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists. They could protect him. After making up his mind, Zhang Qiufan immediately began to cover his traces, and fled in the direction of Antai Prefecture. Thanks to Zhang Qiufan's high-profile actions in Luan Prefecture, there were many people in the prefecture who knew him. Chu Xiu subordinates were divided into more than 10 groups, and almost half of them had found his traces and began to hunt him down. However, Zhang Qiufan was still quite skilled. For example, the Wolf King, the Fire Slave, and the others had also found his traces, but he had used various methods to avoid them. Of course, this was mainly due to the inheritance that Zhang Qiufan had obtained. It was the inheritance left behind by a hall master of the Kunlun devil cult, and there were many strange things in it, as well as some external objects and trump cards. Otherwise, Zhang Qiufan would not have survived until he reached Antai Prefecture. In a small town about 5 kilometers away from Antai Prefecture, Zhang Qiufan wore a black bandana and mask on his face, but underneath it, his face was frighteningly pale. Seeing that he was about to reach Antai Prefecture, Zhang Qiufan let out a sigh of relief. Zhang Qiufan had not had a good rest for the past few days, and now that he was about to reach Antai Prefecture, Zhang Qiufan naturally could not slack off. He only planned to buy some dry rations to fill his stomach, and then immediately set off. For Zhang Qiufan, this pursuit was not without its benefits. Although Zhang Qiufan was a loose cultivator, his experience was relatively smooth. When he was young, he displayed talent that far surpassed that of a loose cultivator of the same age. Although he could not compare to those cultivators from large sects and aristocratic families, he was still successfully selected to become a guest of Prince Anil Palace. Later, when Prince Anil Palace was destroyed, he fled in a panic, but accidentally obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun devil cult's demon heart hall. As long as he did not seek death, he would have a place in Jianghu in the future. But in the end, he was still a nobody, and his vision was limited. So, as soon as he obtained this little bit of success, he began to become arrogant. He even dared to publicly proclaim that he was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. And this series of pursuits had poured a few buckets of cold water over Zhang Qiufan's head, finally waking him up. He now knew exactly how strong he was, and what it meant by, "There is always someone better than you out there." Zhang Qiufan even swore to himself that once he arrived at Antai Prefecture, obtained the protection of the Yang family, and joined the evil pole sect, he would definitely keep a low profile for a period of time. He would concentrate on digesting the inheritance he had obtained before coming out of seclusion. In the future, he would not be so ostentatious, and would have to be as careful as if he was walking on thin ice. With this thought in mind, Zhang Qiufan walked up to the only stall on the street that sold steamed buns, and said in a hoarse voice, "Give me 10 steamed buns." The young stall seller smiled and said, "Sir, do you want element steamed bun or meat steamed bun?" Zhang Qiufan said in a low voice, "Meat." The stall seller quickly picked up 10 meat steamed buns for Zhang Qiufan, wrapped them in toilet paper, and handed them over. Zhang Qiufan directly threw out a silver fragment and said, "Take the rest as a tip, keep the change." The stall seller hurriedly smiled and said, "Thank you, young master." Zhang Qiufan subconsciously picked up the meat steamed bun, preparing to eat it as he hurried along, but then he felt that something was wrong. After being chased for so many days, Zhang Chufan had developed a somewhat suspicious and cautious personality. This steamed bun vendor was only selling one steamed bun for 3 copper coins. She could buy all of the steamed buns in his stall with a single piece of silver. However, this guy didn't seem to care at all after receiving the silver and casually threw it into the box. Instead, he was paying attention to her all this time. Zhang Chufan's expression changed slightly, and he involuntarily put down the meat steamed bun that was about to enter his mouth. Meanwhile, the smile on the stall seller's face gradually disappeared, and his expression became strange. "Young Master Zhang, why aren't you eating? Is my meat steamed bun not good enough?" Chapter 426. Several days of hunting had made Zhang Chufan's nerves extremely sensitive. The moment the hawker revealed a strange smile, he directly wrapped the meat bun in his inner force and threw it at the hawker. However, at this moment, more than 10 warriors emerged from the crowd on the long street, once again charging at Zhang Chufan with weapons in their hands. Although Zhang Chufan was now an arrow at the end of its flight, there were no 3 Flower Realm warriors among this group of people, so Zhang Chufan was able to escape after a desperate fight. "I say, Wang Shuangdong, your method didn't work. Is it because your poison was too obvious that the kid discovered it?" Sun Zhongchao walked over with a long sword and said with a look of disdain. The one dressed as a peddler was Wang Shuangdong, who had just joined Chu Xiu's side. The ones ambushing Zhang Chufan and the others were also LV Fengxian's good friends in the past, and were now Chu Xiu's subordinates. Taking off his hat, Wang Shuangdong coldly snorted and said, "Bull**T. My poison is colorless and odorless, so it's impossible to discover it. You must have accidentally revealed your murderous intent when you were ambushing him, and that's why the kid noticed it." A few days ago, Wang Shuangdong and the others had just joined Chu Xiu's forces. This time, they naturally wanted to perform well. Most of Wang Shuangdong and the others were originally rogue cultivators. Compared to some warriors who came from sects and aristocratic families, they were very reasonable. Lu Fengxian was their good friend, but Chu Xiu was not. If they wanted to muddle along under Chu Xiu's command, Chu Xiu would not make things difficult for them for the sake of their relationship with Lu Fengxian. However, they could not get past themselves. Their performance was shameful. Not only did they lose face, but they also lost face for LV Fengxian. Therefore, when they were brought out by Chu Xiu this time, they had riveted all their efforts to make some achievements. Unexpectedly, after scheming for so long, that guy still escaped. The others came over to smooth things over. That kid isn't someone easy to deal with. Otherwise, Official Chu wouldn't pay so much attention to him. However, this guy has already been seriously injured by several groups of people from before. Now that Official Chu is rushing over, this guy won't be able to escape. Everyone nodded and immediately rushed toward the Antai Prefecture. At this time, in front of the Yang family of the Antai Prefecture, Zhang Chufan looked extremely miserable. He was covered in blood and dust, as if he had escaped from a battlefield. At the entrance of the Yang family, the 2 Yang family disciples guarding the gate saw Zhang Chufan's appearance and immediately reprimanded him rudely. "Where did this beggar come from? Is this a place where you have the right to come? Get out of my way!" Zhang Chufan no longer had the energy to talk nonsense with them. He directly said, "Go report to your patriarch that I, Zhang Chufan, have come. If something happens, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The 2 cultivators guarding the gate actually recognized Zhang Chufan. After all, Zhang Chufan had been courteously welcomed into the Yang family by the Yang family's people, saying that the evil pole sect was trying to recruit him. Now that they heard Zhang Chufan's words, they took a closer look and realized that this miserable beggar-like guy in front of them really was the Zhang Chufan they had seen before. The 2 of them were shocked and quickly helped Zhang Chufan inside. Then they went to inform their patriarch. The Yang family's patriarch, Yang Kai-tai, was in his 50s and had reached the unity of heaven and man boundary. His son was currently an inner disciple of the evil pole sect, so this time, the evil pole sect wanted to recruit Zhang Chufan through the Yang family. Seeing Zhang Chufan's appearance, Yang Kai-tai was shocked. "Little friend Zhang, how did you become like this? What's going on?" Zhang Chufan's face showed a bitter smile and said, "If I said I don't know, would you believe me, Patriarch Yang? Just a few days ago, several groups of unknown people began to chase after me. Some wanted to kill me, while others wanted to capture me alive. I didn't even know where they came from. I didn't even know who was behind them, and yet I ended up like this. Yang Kai-tai couldn't help but frown when he heard this, but he didn't take it seriously. To be honest, Yang Kai-tai didn't really like Zhang Chu-fan because this person was a bit too arrogant. He thought he was invincible after obtaining a small opportunity. Last time, when he represented the evil pole sect to recruit him, Zhang Chu-fan was even arrogant enough to think that he could be trained by the evil pole sect. With the relationship between the Yang family and the evil pole sect, Yang Kai-tai naturally knew the ins and outs of the evil pole sect. Although the evil pole sect wasn't weak in the devil path, it wasn't too strong either. Therefore, the entire evil pole sect could only train one person, and that person was Yi Tianxia, who had successfully cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra. Therefore, even if Zhang Chu-fan joined the evil pole sect, his ranking would definitely be below Yi Tianxia. Of course, if the evil pole sect personally recruited Zhang Chu-fan, then as long as he joined the evil pole sect, he would definitely become an elite disciple. Therefore, Yang Kai-tai didn't want to become enemies with the other party. Yang Kai-tai had also heard about what Zhang Chu-fan had done in Luan County. This guy was like a villain who was intoxicated by success. He had offended a lot of people during this period of time, so it was not surprising that someone wanted to kill him. Yang Kai-tai just patted Zhang Chu-fan's shoulder and said, "Little friend Zhang, don't worry. In my Yang family, you can be said to be absolutely safe. After some time, you will also enter the evil pole sect to cultivate. At that time, with the evil pole sect's protection, you won't have to be afraid even if many people try to kill you. By the way, my Yang family also has people cultivating in the evil pole sect. After little friend Zhang joins the evil pole sect, please take care of them." Zhang Chu-fan breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this and said, "Please rest assured, Patriarch Yang. I, Zhang Chu-fan, will definitely repay any enmity I have, and I will never forget Patriarch Yang's help today." Yang Kai-tai looked at Zhang Chu-fan with some surprise. Did this Zhang Chu-fan's temperament change? But at this time, several Yang family cultivators rushed in from outside and shouted, "Family Lord, bad news. There are hundreds of people outside and they have surrounded our Yang family. They also threatened to hand over the remnants of the evil pole sect. If we dare to protect them, then we will be treated as accomplices." Yang Kai-tai was suddenly surprised, looked at Zhang Chu-fan and said, "Didn't you say that there were only a dozen people chasing you? How come there are so many people now?" Zhang Chu-fan smiled bitterly and said, "There are more than 10 people in each group, but I've met more than 10 groups of people who want to kill me along the way, and I don't know how many groups there are." Yang Kai-tai frowned. With the Yang family's prestige in Lun Commandery, who would dare provoke them? Since these people dared to attack the Yang family, it proved that they were not from Lun Prefecture, at least they were not afraid of the Yang family. However, Yang Kai-tai still had some confidence. He said to Zhang Chu-fan, "Little friend Zhang need not worry. My Yang family has been operating in Lun Commandery for many years, our reputation is well known, and we are also on good terms with the martial arts forces around Lun Prefecture. Who would dare come to Lun Prefecture and not give face to our Yang family?" Just as Yang Kai-tai's voice fell, a loud sound rang out, as if something had shattered. Several Yang family cultivators ran in a panic and shouted, "Patriarch, it's not good. The people outside are attacking." Yang Kai-tai's eyes suddenly became very gloomy. He had just said that as long as someone came to Luan Prefecture, they would not dare to not give face to the Yang family. But now someone had broken the Yang family's gate. This was a slap in the face. Yang Kai-tai coldly snorted and said, "Go inform the ancestor to come here, and also gather the other forces in Lin Prefecture. Tell them that outsiders have come to cause trouble in Lin Prefecture. The rest of you come with me. I want to see who has the guts to provoke the Yang family in Lin Prefecture." In the Yang family's courtyard, the gate had been smashed to pieces by Yan Bugui's sword, and there were several dead bodies of Yang family cultivators on the ground. There were no wounds on their bodies. Only a bone-piercing nail was accurately inserted into their foreheads. This group of people was also courting death. Chu Xiao had only come for Zhang Chu-fan, but these Yang family cultivators who were guarding the gate spoke rudely, and Chu Xiao was too lazy to feign civility with them, so he had to use force. Chu Xiao might not be so forceful in other matters, but Zhang Chu-fan's existence was related to his safety in the Yinma clan. Therefore, Zhang Chu-fan had to die. It was useless no matter who stood in his way. Zhang Chu-fan was lucky that he did not directly encounter Chu Xiao, otherwise he would not even have the chance to escape to Luan Prefecture. In the center of the Yang family's courtyard, Chu Xiao stood with his hands clasped behind his back, dressed in black, surrounded by Guanzhong torture room cultivators in black or gray. The murderous aura they exuded made all the cultivators present tremble. Among the Jianghu arresters of the Guanzhong torture room, only two groups of people were the most special. One was from the criminal arrest department, who were the real trump card of the Guanzhong torture room. What they did was not to investigate cases, but to kill people. The other group was from Chu Xiao. Ever since Chu Xiao had assumed the position of patrol envoy, his subordinates had followed him to destroy countless families and clans. Moreover, some of his subordinates were originally assassins of the Azure Dragon group. Therefore, their killing intent and evil aura were extremely terrifying. In fact, they were even comparable to the martial artists of the arrest department. The Yang family was a big family in Luan Prefecture, and was the well-deserved overlord of the whole Luan Prefecture. However, compared with Chu Xiao's subordinates, the Yang family cultivators were like greenhorns in Jianghu, with pitiful murderous aura. Yang Kai-tai walked out of the house with Zhang Chu-fan. Looking at the dead body on the ground, he could not help pointing at Chu Xiao and shouted coldly, "Who are you? How dare you come to my Yang family and make trouble? What on earth do you want?" Chu Xiao said lightly, "I can only answer the first and the last of your 3 questions. My name is Chu Xiao. You should have heard of me. As for what I want, it's very simple. Hand over the person behind you. You should know who he is. Covering up the remnants of the evil cult, your Yang family is the sinner of Jianghu. As for what happens to sinners of Jianghu, you don't know, but I can tell you, that is, the death of the whole family. Don't think I'm joking, I don't like to joke. If you don't believe me, you can try." Chapter 427. Chu Xiao's words were also very arrogant, but in reality, no one thought that he was arrogant, because there were not many people in the entire Jianghu who had not heard of his name. There were at least 100 people on the Longhu leaderboard. Furthermore, the leaderboard would change several times every month or even every day. Therefore, other than the people from Wind's Sweeping Tower, most people could not remember who was on the leaderboard. However, if one could get into the top 10 of the leaderboard, it was enough to be remembered by the entire Jianghu. Yang Kai-tai did not know Chu Xiao, but he did not dare to say that he had not heard of Chu Xiao. Whether it was Chu Xiao's identity as the torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room, or Chu Xiao's terrifying battle record of killing oneness of heaven and man realm martial artists as easily as taking something out of his pocket, they all made Yang Kai-tai extremely fearful. However, the only thing he did not understand was why Chu Xiao had to kill Zhang Chu-fan. Even Zhang Chu-fan himself did not understand this point. He glared at Chu Xiao and roared, "Chu Xiao! I have no enmity with you. Why do you have to kill me?" Chu Xiao said lightly, "Everyone has the right to punish the evil and unorthodox. Don't you always clamor that you are the successor of the Kunlun devil cult? Fine, today I have come to eliminate evil and defend justice. Isn't that normal?" Looking at Chu Xiao's hypocritical appearance, Yang Kai-tai could not help but curse in his heart, "Normal my ass." The Kunlun devil cult had already been destroyed, and the Devil Dao had been keeping a low profile all these years, so there were not many conflicts between the Orthodox and the Devil. Other than the hidden Devil clan martial artists who liked to cause trouble, the other Devil Dao sects could appear openly in the Jianghu. Naturally, the martial arts sects in the Jianghu would not provoke the peaceful demonic martial artists. Basically, other than the people of the Great Light Temple who always talked about killing demons and putting it into practice, there were relatively few battles between the righteous and demonic in the Jianghu. Chu Xiao was a member of the Guanzhong torture room, and he was famous for his ruthlessness and decisiveness. But now, he was saying that he wanted to eliminate evil and defend justice. What a joke! Yang Kai-tai frowned and said, "Chu Xiao, what exactly do you want? Zhang Chufan's identity as the successor of the Kunlun devil cult is just for show. Those righteous sects haven't even made a move yet, so when did you get the chance to make a move?" He was just saying it, but I took it seriously. Isn't that okay? I don't like to explain things over and over again because my patience is very limited. Now let me ask you, are you going to hand him over or not? Chu Xiao took a step forward, and the killing intent around him had condensed to the extreme. There was no grudge between him and Zhang Chu-fan, but it was a pity that from the moment Zhang Chu-fan got the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall, only one of them could live. So it was useless no matter who came today. Yang Kai-tai frowned and was a little hesitant. He was not as confident as before. He had heard of Chu Xiu's reputation in the Jianghu. The number of Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists who died in his hands was not just one or two. Although Yang Kai-tai was confident in his strength, he was still a little uncertain when facing Chu Xiu. At this moment, an old voice came coldly. Where did this Jianghu Jr. come from? So arrogant. How dare you come to my Yang family and act so presumptuously? Do you really think that there is no one in the Yang family of Leping County? Kai-tai, I handed the Yang family over to you, but you have disappointed me. In the past, my Yang family was almost the strongest in Leping County. But today, you let a junior block the door and threaten me. Where is the face of my Yang family? Do you still want your face? As this voice came, an old man holding a sword came out of the inner hall. Although he looked old, he still maintained the powerful strength of Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Yang Kai-tai was not the only Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artist in the Yang family. The Yang family's old ancestor had also reached the Unity of Heaven and Man realm long ago, but he handed over the position of patriarch when he was old and went into closed-door cultivation to preserve his lifespan. Generally, martial artists who were more afraid would do this. Hearing the words of the Yang family's old ancestor, Yang Kai-tai suddenly felt bad. He had not decided whether to fight to the death with Chu Xiu, but his old ancestor had already made the decision for him. In fact, this could not be blamed on the Yang family's old ancestor, because the Yang family's old ancestor did not know who Chu Xiu was. When Yang Kai-tai sent someone to inform the Yang family's old ancestor, he did not see Chu Xiu. Moreover, the Yang family's old ancestor had been in closed-door cultivation for more than 10 years. How could an old man who was about to die have the leisure to listen to Jianghu gossip and pay attention to the movements of these junior martial artists? It was estimated that the Yang family's old ancestor had only heard of the names Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. So when the Yang family's old ancestor, who had just come out of closed-door cultivation, saw a junior martial artist daring to block the door and threaten the Yang family, the Yang family's old ancestor could not help but curse. But at this time, hearing the Yang family's old ancestor's words, Chu Xiu smiled and said coldly, "It turns out that the Yang family cares about face more than life. Well, I will fulfill your wish." As soon as his voice fell, Chu Xiu's whole body was filled with murderous intent. The Yang family's old ancestor snorted coldly, and immediately rushed towards Chu Xiu with a long sword in his hand. His speed was so fast that even Yang Kai-tai could not stop him. The Yang family's old ancestor was old but strong. When he attacked, the sword aura exploded and the sword chi was extremely powerful. It was not inferior to a young martial artist. But in the eyes of Chu Xiu, the Yang family's old ancestor's speed was slow to a certain level. With the heaven sun gazing at air skill, the trajectory of the Yang family's old ancestor's sword momentum was in Chu Xiu's control. For the current Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air skill, it was still a little difficult to see through some powerful martial artists or complex martial arts skills. But for the Yang family's old ancestor, it was very easy. Chu Xiu moved a few steps lightly and dodged the sword aura before it hit him. Although it was only a few millimeters away, he was not injured at all. The Yang family's old ancestor's eyes showed a touch of surprise. He reversed the sword momentum in his hand and was about to attack Chu Xiu again when he saw Chu Xiu take a few steps forward, just in the trajectory of the Yang family's old ancestor's attack. He could advance to attack, retreat to defend, as if he knew what the Yang family's old ancestor was thinking. In fact, this was really the case. In the eyes of Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air skill, as long as the Yang family's old ancestor used his genuine qi, Chu Xiu could already see the trajectory of his next attack. This Yang family's old ancestor had not fought for a long time. His martial arts skills were very formal and very stiff. It could be said that they were restrained to the extreme by the heaven sun gazing at air skill. But the Yang family's old ancestor did not think so. He gritted his teeth and attacked again, but once again his attack was interrupted by Chu Xiu in advance. This feeling made the Yang family's old ancestor extremely depressed. He changed the sword momentum several times in succession, but none of them could escape the heaven sun gazing at air skill. At this time, he did not realize that because of the continuous changes of sword momentum, his meridians and qi had begun to become chaotic. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly took a heavy step forward. This step brought with it a wave that seemed to resound in the Yang family's old ancestor's heart, completely triggering his chaotic meridians and qi, causing the Yang family's old ancestor to suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Of course, the Heaven Sun gazing at Air skill could not be seen by the crowd. They could only see that it was strange. Chu Xiao had only taken 2 steps casually and forced the Yang family's old ancestor to be unable to use his sword. He had even caused his meridians to become chaotic and injured. This kind of mistake that even Xiantian martial artists would rarely make was actually made by the Yang family's old ancestor, a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. This was simply incredible. Old ancestor. Although Yang Kai-Tai did not know what kind of trick Chu Xiao had used, he subconsciously wanted to help. At this time, a heavy sword and a sky full of hidden weapons attacked him head-on, blocking his action. No matter how strong Tang Ya and Yen Bugui were, they were not as strong as Chu Xiao in the past. He was able to kill someone who was at the unity of heaven and man realm while only at the three-flower realm. But if they attacked with all their strength, it would not be a problem for them to stop Yang Kai-Tai for a while. Chu Xiao quickly walked toward the Yang family's old ancestor. The demonic qi around him was monstrous. As his hands formed a seal, countless demonic qi surged out. The Yang family's old ancestor suddenly let out a painful roar. The blood in his body was boiling, as if it was out of his control. It actually took the initiative to rush toward Chu Xiao. Great demonic blood technique. Amidst the boundless demonic qi, Chu Xiao gently pointed with one hand. The qi and blood that Chu Xiao had forcibly sucked out was several feet high. The Yang family's old ancestor was almost sucked dry by Chu Xiao. With the evil and terrifying great demonic blood technique, even Han Feng of the Morgue Manor could not withstand it when he fought with Chu Xiao, let alone a warrior like the Yang family's old ancestor, whose qi and blood were already declining and had entered the age of senility. As Chu Xiao waved one hand, the power of qi and blood that was several feet high condensed into a giant blade. It directly slashed across the waist, directly cutting the Yang family's old ancestor in half. The sword in Yang Kai-Tai's hand scattered, blasting Yen Bugui and Tang Ya away. But he could not believe the scene before him. In the hands of Chu Xiao, his old ancestor was killed so easily, and in such an evil way. Was the strength of the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger list really so terrifying? But before Yang Kai-Tai could say anything, he saw that Chu Xiao's eyes had already turned to him, his eyes filled with ferocious killing intent. Yang Kai-Tai hurriedly shouted, "Wait! My Yang family is related to the extreme evil sect. The disciples of my Yang family are the inner sect disciples of the extreme evil sect. Zhang Chufan has also been chosen by the extreme evil sect and is prepared to be accepted as a disciple. You don't care about my Yang family, don't you care about the extreme evil sect?" His old ancestor had been killed. Of course Yang Kai-Tai wanted revenge. But he was a cautious person, and even at this time he still maintained his rationality. Based on the strength that Chu Xiao had shown, even if he was alone, it was enough to slaughter the entire Yang family. Extreme evil sect. Haha, why don't you bring out the entire Kunlun devil cult? Chu Xiao's voice had not yet faded, but the heavenly demon dance in his hand had already been unsheathed. The pitch-black blade was surrounded by a monstrous demonic aura. As the Avicii demonic blade slashed out, the demonic flame and murderous intent soared to the sky. Chapter 428. Facing Chu Xiao's powerful devil saber, Yang Kai-Tai felt extremely aggrieved at this time. In fact, the Yang family was the most aggrieved in this matter. The Yang family had nothing to do with Zhang Chufan at all. They were just messengers of the evil extreme sect. If the Yang family's old ancestor had not acted rashly, maybe Yang Kai-Tai would have handed over Zhang Chufan under the threat of Chu Xiao. The Yang family's old ancestor cared more about his face than his life. Anyway, he was almost dead, but Yang Kai-Tai cared about his life. After all, he was in the prime of his life. However, it was a pity that the Yang family's old ancestor was the complete opposite of the other great families. The older he got, the more impulsive he became. On the other hand, the patriarch of the younger generation was incomparably cautious. It didn't matter that the Yang family's old ancestor was dead, but the whole Yang family was thrown into the mess. The sword in Yang Kai-Tai's hand was like tofu under Chu Xiao's Avicii Dao's 3 sabers. It was shattered with a loud bang, and he himself was shaken a few steps back. In a flash, Chu Xiu had already stepped into the selfless killing realm. Once again, the saber swept over and the killing intent soared to the sky. In terms of strength, Yang Kai-tai could only be said to be mediocre among the warriors in the unity of heaven and men realm. The Yang family's inherited cultivation method was mediocre, and Yang Kai-tai's strength was also mediocre. In the whole Antai prefecture or Leping prefecture, the Yang family could show off its power, but in the whole Jianghu, the Yang family was nothing. In the past, Han Feng of the righteous manner was not weak, but he could not withstand a few moves from Chu Xiu. Now, Yang Kai-tai was not even as good as Han Feng. Under the fierce and wild saber momentum of Chu Xiu, Yang Kai-tai stepped back step by step. After a few slashes, the long sword in his hand had been shattered. Yang Kai-tai was so shocked that he could no longer talk to Chu Xiu about his backing in gains and losses. He directly shouted in horror, "Stop! I am willing to hand over Zhang Chu-fan. Official Chu, please let my Yang family live." Yang Kai-tai admitted defeat, but Chu Xiu's saber momentum did not stop at all. "I gave your Yang family a chance before, but you didn't cherish it. Anything could be bought in this world, but the only thing that could not be bought was regret medicine. What's done cannot be undone. So you shall die today." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's saber momentum became even more violent. The demonic energy on the edge of the saber had almost condensed into a substance. As long as Yang Kai-tai was hit by that saber, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. A determined look appeared in Yang Kai-tai's eyes. Even a rabbit would bite when it was cornered, let alone a family head like him. Since Chu Xiu had gone too far and wanted to force him to his death, he had the determination to fight to the death. In that instant, a bloody mist rose around Yang Kai-tai. He had decisively chosen to burn his blood essence. In fact, there were only a few people in Jianghu who did things as ruthlessly as Chu Xiu. Of course, it was not that those people were merciful and did not want to kill all of them. It was just that when people were in despair, they would usually burst out with unexpected power. Once they killed all of them, they would also suffer a part of the impact and even a risk. After all, a desperate person was still very terrifying. But Chu Xiu was different. He would rather kill everyone when he had the chance. He did not want to leave a few enemies. Although those people could not threaten him for the time being, there might be some changes in the future. Now, Yang Kai-tai had begun to fight with his life on the line. However, seeing his movements, the corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up into a cold smile. The power of the Great Devil Blood technique was actually not very effective at the beginning of the fierce battle. It could only play a role of harassment. When the enemy was at his peak, even the Great Devil Blood technique could not draw out all of the opponent's blood essence. However, as long as the opponent's meridians or internal organs were damaged, it was like a wooden barrel with a crack. Chu Xiu's Great Devil Blood technique could follow the crack and draw out all the blood in the opponent's body. Its power was evil and terrifying. And now, the method that Yang Kai-tai was using to burn his blood essence was the crudest one. It was simply using inner force to ignite his blood essence in exchange for power of equal value. To deal with such a life-risking secret technique, Chu Xiu did not choose to absorb the power of blood essence. Instead, he used the Great Devil Blood technique to ignite Yang Kai-tai's blood essence even more intensely. In that instant, Yang Kai-tai felt that something was wrong. Burning blood essence also needed to be done in an orderly manner. He had to completely ignite his blood essence with his true qi. Only then could the two fuse together could it bring out the greatest effect. But burning blood essence so intensely was no longer fighting with his life on the line. It was suicide. The blood essence all over Yang Kai-tai's body was burning wildly. The power was no longer under his control. Even his rationality was gradually disappearing. However, Yang Kai-tai's only obsession was to kill Chu Xiu. So, he had gathered all the power in his body and turned it into a soaring sword qi that slashed at Chu Xiu. It was an attack that was completely instinctive. But with Chu Xiu's Heaven's Son gazing at air technique and his extremely fast internal binding seal, that powerful sword qi could not hurt Chu Xiu at all. Yang Kai-tai's blood essence gradually dissipated. His eyes showed a look of unwillingness and he finally fell to the ground with a loud bang. To be precise, he was not killed by Chu Xiu. Instead, he had exhausted himself to death. And now that Yang Kai-tai was dead, the other members of the Yang family seemed to be scared stiff. Then, like frightened birds and beasts, They began to scatter and flee. Chu Xiu waved his hand and spat out a word indifferently. Kill. It was obvious that Chu Xiu was ready to kill them all. Tang Ya and the other old men who had followed Chu Xiu for a long time had already understood Chu Xiu's style of doing things. So, without saying anything, they directly led their people to attack. As for Wang Shuangdong and the others who had joined Chu Xiu's forces not long ago, they still could not stand it. So, they subconsciously did not move. It was fine to chase after Zhang Chufan before. After all, that was Chu Xiu's mission. Zhang Chufan also had some strength. But now, Chu Xiu's massacre of the Yang family was simply a massacre. This made Wang Shuangdong and the others somewhat resistant. They felt that this kind of massacre went against the natural order. Chu Xiu walked to the side of Wang Shuangdong and the others and said indifferently, "Why? You can't bear to do it? The righteous path of chivalry subdues people with virtue. And people like us, the only thing we can do is to stop killing by killing. There is a good saying, don't not do good because it is small, don't do evil because it is small. If you do good and accumulate virtue, no one will call you a chivalrous person. On the contrary, if you do evil, even if it is a small evil, you will bear the blame. Anyway, you will be scolded by others. What's the difference if the scolding is light or heavy? In this world, it is very difficult to be a good person, unless you can reach the level of the great hero Chu Kuanga. Otherwise, put down those insignificant bottom lines and rules in your hearts." Wang Shuangdong and the others were shocked. Chu Xiu's words still had some impact on their worldview. Wang Shuangdong and the others were actually not good people. They were all rogue cultivators. They did not do many good things and killed many people. For example, Wang Shuangdong himself was the disciple of the poison master, Du Bujiu. He began to kill people to practice poison when he was young. There were not many people who died directly in his hands, but the number of people who died indirectly in his hands was innumerable. However, although they did not think that they were good people, they never thought that they were bad people either. But now, Chu Xiu told them that it was time to recognize themselves. If you want to be a good person, then you should learn from Chu Kuanga, leave now, and do good to the extreme. If you want to be a bad person, then since you have already done evil things, then don't think about being a whore and having a chastity. Not everyone can be a hypocrite like Nieren Long. It is easier to be a real villain. Wang Shuangdong and the others looked at each other, gritted their teeth and rushed forward. No one chose to leave, because they knew that they were not good people. After a while, before the Yang family had finished killing the people, Tangya had already carried Zhang Chufan and walked in front of Chu Xiu. Last time, Tangya was careless and let Zhang Chufan escape. But this time, Tangya would not let Zhang Chufan escape again. Although he was a bit lazy, if he fell in the same place twice, then Tangya could not afford to lose face. At this time, Zhang Chufan was caught in Tangya's hands, and he really felt afraid and unwilling. Some time ago, he was still dreaming of obtaining the divine inheritance and becoming the supreme master of the martial arts world. He did not expect that now this beautiful dream had been shattered. And the most frustrating thing was that Zhang Chufan still did not know why Chu Xiu wanted to kill him. Although Chu Xiu kept saying that he wanted to eliminate evil and defend the Tao, even an idiot could see what kind of person this Chu Xiu was. Such a cruel guy who could easily destroy an entire family said that he wanted to eliminate evil and defend the Tao. Who would believe it? Moreover, Chu Xiu was a member of Guanzhong torture room, and the righteous martial arts world of Eastern Qi did not say that they wanted to kill him. So why should he, Chu Xiu, be anxious? Zhang Chufan still wanted to struggle one last time. He still had a bright future, and he certainly did not want to die at this time. Therefore Zhang Chufan hurriedly shouted at Chu Xiu, "Official Chu." However, as soon as Zhang Chufan shouted these three words, he saw Chu Xiu put his right hand on his head, his eyes like two deep pools, and performed the soul-extinguishing skill to the extreme. His powerful mental strength directly and violently entered Zhang Chufan's mind, plundering the memory of the inheritance of Demon Heart Hall in his mind. Zhang Chufan's body kept twitching. When Chu Xiu completely removed the memory, Zhang Chufan was already bleeding from the 7 orifices of his head, fell to the ground, completely lifeless. This kind of violent soul-searching method could make a person become an idiot after the end, but a bad one, like now, would be directly killed by the impact of mental strength. Of course, from the beginning, Chu Xiu did not want Zhang Chufan to continue to live. From the moment he obtained the inheritance of Demon Heart Hall, only one of them could live. Chapter 429. There were a lot of messy memories in Zhang Chufan's mind. With Chu Xiu's mental strength, those messy memories had been completely destroyed by Chu Xiu, leaving behind only memories of the Demon Heart Hall's inheritance. The soul-searching secret technique was relatively simple and crude. While crushing the other party with mental strength, one could theoretically find out all sorts of things. However, if one wanted to dig out a cultivation technique from the other party's mind without missing a single word, the level of mental strength required was terrifying. At the very least, Chu Xiu could not do it now. Even martial Dao masters who specialized in mental strength would not be able to do it. Chu Xiu only knew from Zhang Chufan's mind how he obtained the inheritance and the location of the cultivation technique. Speaking of which, Zhang Chufan was truly a person blessed by providence. The method he used to obtain this inheritance was truly mysterious. In the original plot, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall was very cautious. He did not reveal where he obtained the inheritance until his death. Now, Chu Xiu knew that the inheritance was actually in the sea. No wonder no one had noticed it for so long. In the past, the Demon Heart Hall's hallmaster, Nangong Wuming, was chased by the righteous and forced to jump into the sea with serious injuries. Therefore, Nangong Wuming opened up a cave under the sea and sealed it with a formation. While isolating the seawater, it could also isolate the aura of the place. He also left a mark of the Kunlun Devil cult on the outside, hoping that someone from the Kunlun Devil cult would find this place in the future. However, a few hundred years later, the Kunlun Devil cult had been destroyed. Even the mark he left behind had been erased. In the past, Zhang Chufan was a hanger-on of the Prince of Annal's residence. After the residence was destroyed, he fled in panic, afraid of being discovered by the imperial court. In the end, Zhang Chufan accidentally provoked some murderous bandits on his way to escape. During a fierce battle with them, he accidentally fell into the sea on the cliff and happened to find Nangong Wuming's inheritance. Not only did Nangong Wuming leave behind all his cultivation techniques, but he also left behind some secret treasures and elixirs that he used to carry around with him. However, these consumables had already been used up by Zhang Chufan, and not a single one was left. Some of the elixirs produced by the Kunlun Devil cult still needed to be refined in a special way. In the end, Zhang Chufan swallowed them without thinking. Although his own strength had skyrocketed to the three-flower realm, it was still a great waste. Chu Xiu searched Zhang Chufan's arms and took out a cultivation jade scroll. It contained all the inheritance of Nangong Wuming's cultivation techniques in the past. In fact, the cultivation transmission jade slip was mainly used to preserve the cultivation technique and pass it down. If he did not intend to pass the cultivation technique down, the safest method would be to memorize it in his mind and then destroy the cultivation transmission jade slip. That was the safest method. There were too many people around, so Chu Xiu could only forcibly memorize it in his mind. He also roughly checked the contents of the jade slip. Chu Xiu could not help but shake his head. Nangong Wuming used to be the hallmaster of the Demon Heart Hall. He had a high status in the Kunlun Devil cult. Nangong Wuming used to be the hallmaster of the Demon Heart Hall. His status in the Kunlun Devil cult was definitely not low. When Chu Xiu chatted with Mr. Lu before, he learned about the structure of the Kunlun Devil cult. In the Kunlun Devil cult, apart from Duga Wei Wei, the 4 demon lords were the leaders. Each demon lord had extremely powerful subordinates. Apart from the 4 demon lords, the Kunlun Devil cult also had dozens of demon envoys. These demon envoys were titled. They might have subordinates, or they might be alone. However, as long as they left the Kunlun Devil cult, they represented the interests and reputation of the entire Kunlun Devil cult. They were considered the backbone of the Kunlun Devil cult. For example, Situ Li of the Phaseless Demon sect. His branch had always been a demon envoy of the Kunlun Devil cult. Although the Phaseless Demon sect was not considered a direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult, they were extremely loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult. The title of Demon Envoy was considered a commendation from the Kunlun Devil cult to the Phaseless Demon sect. Compared to Demon Envoys, the hallmasters of the Kunlun Devil cult were much more complicated. At the peak of the Kunlun Devil cult, there were dozens of halls under them. Each hall had a different role. Some were in charge of fighting, some were in charge of alchemy, and some were in charge of other miscellaneous things. Therefore, in theory, the position of the hallmasters was the same as that of the Demon Envoys. However, their combat power was different. Some were on par with the Demon Envoys, but some were not. However, Nangong Wuming's Demon Heart Hall was one of the halls of the Kunlun Devil cult that was known for its combat power. Moreover, its techniques were inclined toward the spiritual type. It combined the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and demon into one, creating the great art of inner demons, and the 9 forms of soul assimilation, a strange technique that combines spiritual power and demonic techniques. In Chu Xiu's opinion, it was not inferior to the Xiahou clan's art of imperial spirit. However, Zhang Chufan was a little disappointing. Nangong Wuming's main cultivation techniques were these two, but he felt that they were too obscure and hard to understand. Therefore, he didn't bother to learn them. Instead, he only learned a few of the Kunlun demon sect's internal techniques and martial techniques. Although these internal techniques and martial techniques were not weak, they were clearly incomparable to Nangong Wuming's secret techniques. Just as Chu Xiu was thinking about the technique, Tanya quietly walked up to Chu Xiu's side. He pouted at the door and said in a low voice, "Sir, people from the other forces of the Antai prefecture are here." Chu Xiu nodded and suddenly reached his hand out, directly crushing that skill-imparting jade slip. Zhang Chufan was dead, and now the technique was in his hands. From now on, he, Chu Xiu, was the successor of the Demon Heart Hall, the direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult. He could pass off the fake as the real one. No, to be more precise, Chu Xiu was the real one. Only when there was something fake would there be something real. Now that the fake was gone, Chu Xiu naturally became the real one. As soon as he walked out of the door, there were a lot of martial artists gathered outside. There were hundreds of them, and the ones leading them were not weak. There were quite a few martial artists at the 5 Cheese Origin Realm and the 3 Flower Realm. They were all local martial arts forces of the Antai prefecture, and they had just been summoned by the Yang family. However, they didn't expect the Yang clan to be annihilated so quickly. How long has it been since the Yang clan was annihilated? The martial artists who escaped from the Yang family had already told them about Chu Xiu's identity and what had happened. This left them at a loss as to what to do. Logically speaking, Chu Xiu was an outsider. No matter how many reasons he had, he dared to be so arrogant in the Antai prefecture. They should have been united against the outsiders. However, the problem was that the Yang family had already been destroyed. The speed at which the Yang family was destroyed was faster than they could reach. If they were to unite against the outsiders now, they would be courting death. However, if they did not say a word, wouldn't they look a little too cowardly? Before they could say anything, however, Chu Xiu had already walked out with his people. He said calmly, "Zhang Chufan is known as the reincarnation of the Kunlun Devil cult. In order to prevent the remnants of the cult from wreaking havoc in the martial world, I have already killed him. As a martial arts family, the Yang family openly sheltered the remnants of the cult and conspired against the law. I have also killed them." After saying that, Chu Xiu walked out in front of everyone, as if what he had said just now was just a routine notice to them. In reality, that was indeed the case. Chu Xiu was informing them. It did not matter if they believed his reason or not. He had already killed them, so do as you see fit. In the face of Chu Xiu's arrogant attitude, the martial artists of the Antai prefecture did not dare to say a word. Some even stepped aside. Just then, Chu Xiu suddenly stopped in his tracks. With a wave of one hand, the Gangqi saber light burst out and directly beheaded 2 Yang family survivors hiding in the crowd. These 2 were the martial artists of the Yang family, who had just gone to inform the Yang family. They thought they had already escaped death, but they did not expect that they had only stepped into the gates of hell a little late. The sudden saber strike caught everyone off guard, and even splashed the surrounding people with blood. This made them immediately glare at Chu Xiu. Some of them wanted to say something, but they were held back by some of the more experienced and prudent martial artists next to them. They had already restrained themselves before. If they were to fall out with Chu Xiu now, it would be really unwise. Watching Chu Xiu and his people leave, someone said indignantly, "This Chu Xiu is really arrogant. This is our Eastern Cheese Antai prefecture, not his Guangzhong torture room. Does he not even have someone to uphold justice?" Someone shook his head and said, "Justice? Chu Xiu came to kill the remnants of the demonic path. What justice does he want? On the contrary, he is the righteous one. I say, everyone, don't think too much about this mess. The Yang family has been destroyed, but the Antai prefecture is still the Antai prefecture. The heavens will not change. Just do what you have to do. I heard that the Yang family is related to the omniscient sect. If you want to worry about this matter, it should be the omniscient sect. For the time being, we will pretend that we are deaf and blind and didn't see anything. Everyone present nodded their heads. Although they respected the Yang clan and would listen to most of the Yang clan's orders, that was only when the Yang clan was still alive. Now that the Yang clan had been destroyed, they would not be in any danger even if they pretended to be deaf and mute, even though it would seem a little cowardly. What they did not know was that the people from the omniscient sect they had just been discussing were already outside the Ontai prefecture, and they were all important people. Outside the gates of the Ontai prefecture, Yi Tianxia of the omniscient sect carried his long spear, blood serpent, on his back. He was dressed in a loose black robe with his chest open, revealing his strong chest muscles and the blood serpent tattoo. Coupled with his masculine and handsome appearance, he really did have a strange evil charm to him. Several omniscient sect martial artists followed behind him, but the most eye-catching one was the woman riding a black panther beside him. Her entire body was shrouded in black muslin, and even her face was covered with a black veil. But through the thin black muslin, one could vaguely see her exquisite and alluring figure. Anyone would be attracted to the woman at first glance and ignore the elegant and mysterious black panther mount beneath her. This woman was the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult who had fought on Floating Jade Mountain. Chapter 430. In front of the gate of Ontai Prefecture, Yi Tianxia flicked his hair and said to the saintess of moon-worshipping cult, "I say, saintess, is that guy who claims to be the successor of the Demon Heart Hall worth our attention? In my opinion, he's just a clown trying to please the crowd. Although that Lin Yi guy from the Inma clan is a bit annoying, his strength is there for all to see. There aren't many people of the same level who can withstand my spear. I believe that he's the successor of the Kunlun Devil cult, but why do I feel that this Zhang Chufan is a fake?" The saintess spoke softly. Her voice was as clear and moving as a mountain spring, but there was a hint of contempt in her words. "What do you know? In the past, your omniscient sect was nothing in front of the Kunlun Devil cult. To put it bluntly, when the Kunlun Devil cult was at its strongest, even if your omniscient sect wanted to be the dog of the Kunlun Devil cult, you weren't qualified. That's why the people of the Phaseless Demon sect have the title of Shadow Demon Envoy, while your omniscient sect has nothing. In the past, our ancestors had dealings with the Demon Heart Hall, so we know some details about their techniques. Although this Zhang Chufan didn't use Nangong Wuming's signature martial arts, the inner demon rotation technique and the 9 forms of soul catcher, the techniques he used are some of the secret techniques of the Demon Heart Hall. Therefore, this Zhang Chufan might really be related to the Demon Heart Hall. Although there's only a certain chance, if we can learn the inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall from him, it's definitely worth it." In the past, Chu Xiu had only revealed his identity as the legitimate successor of the Kunlun Devil cult during the Demon Alliance meeting, but he didn't say that he was from the Demon Heart Hall. If the moon-worshipping cult knew this, they would probably be more suspicious of Chu Xiu's identity, just like Mei Qinglian. Of course, the most miserable person in this matter was actually Zhang Chufan. He thought that the extreme evil sect was his savior, and even Yang Kai-tai thought that the extreme evil sect wanted to raise Zhang Chufan. Who would have thought that they had guessed wrong? From the very beginning, the extreme evil sect had never considered raising Zhang Chufan. The omniscient sect's strength wasn't all that strong. Raising Yi Tianxia was already their limit. How could they have the time to raise Zhang Chufan? The omniscient sect had contacted Zhang Chufan purely because of the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden's idea. After the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain, the Inma clan chose to keep a low profile. On the contrary, the moon-worshipping cult was extremely high profile, as if they were the #1 sect of the demonic path. Since then, the 5 Poison sect, which was previously attached to the moon-worshipping sect, and the omniscient sect, which wasn't that strong, had already taken the attitude of following the moon-worshipping sect's lead. Only powerful demonic sects like the 6th Demon sect could still maintain their independence. As a high-ranking member of the moon-worshipping sect, the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden had also personally brought some people to the Northern Yen to recruit a group of disciples in the Northern Yen land. Naturally, the omniscient sect had to receive them respectfully. After the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden accidentally learned about Zhang Chufan's matter, she asked the omniscient sect to come forward and recruit Zhang Chufan in the name of the omniscient sect. In reality, It was only because of the demon heart hall's cultivation method that he possessed. Hearing that the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden looked down on the omniscient sect, Yi Tianxia's eyes showed a hint of anger, but he quickly concealed it. He just laughed and said, "With the current power of the moon-worshipping sect, do you still lack cultivation methods?" The moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden said lightly, "Of course, the more cultivation methods, the better. Even if you can't learn them all, it's also good to master them. Didn't the sect leader's Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra and the East Emperor Tai's Burning Sky Mirror come from this?" Yi Tianxia suddenly approached the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden and said in a teasing tone, "Then I wonder if the holy maiden is interested in my Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra? You should know that I'm the only person in the world who can cultivate the cultivation method of a ferocious beast. If the holy maiden is interested, whether it's day or night, I'll be willing to teach it to you." As he said this, Yi Tianxia also showed a self-righteous and evil smile to the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden, but in the next moment, his smile froze on his face. A whip completely condensed from demonic flames lashed at his head. The demonic flames were so powerful that they seemed to be able to devour any power. It was 80% similar to the East Emperor Tai's Burning Sky Mirror, but its power and artistic conception were not as strong as the East Emperor Tai's. Horrified, Yi Tianxia hurriedly tried to dodge, but at this time, two goo insects that looked like ice crystals bit on his legs. Not only did they freeze his body and meridians, but they also almost froze his soul forcibly. Pa! A loud and crisp sound was heard. Even with Yi Tianxia's physical strength comparable to that of a ferocious beast, he was directly hit by the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden's whip, leaving a black burn mark on his face. The moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden sneered, "Yi Tianxia, put away your disgusting thoughts. How dare you provoke me with your virtue? Do you really think I'm one of those love-struck female disciples in your evil extreme sect? Don't you know who you are? How dare you speak so rudely to me? Do you believe that even if I cripple you now, the sect master of your evil extreme sect wouldn't dare to say anything? Remember, behave yourself. Don't think that just because you have some achievements that you don't know anything. If you really want me, if you kill Zhang Qingzhen or Zhong Xian now, I can give you that chance." Covering his face, Yi Tianxia looked at the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden with a strong murderous intent in his eyes. Even his eyes turned into the golden pupils of a snake. Those who were familiar with Yi Tianxia knew that once he showed such a change, it meant that Yi Tianxia was angry, and he was extremely angry. The rest of the evil extreme sect's warriors beside Yi Tianxia quickly helped him up. At the same time, they frantically transmitted a message to Yi Tianxia, telling him to consider the big picture and not to cause any more trouble. After being whipped, Yi Tianxia looked at the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden with hatred in his eyes, but he didn't dare to express it too much. In the evil extreme sect, Yi Tianxia was indeed very outstanding. He was masculine and handsome, and coupled with his blood flood dragon tattoo, he gave off a demonic charm. Therefore, in the evil extreme sect, there were many women who took the initiative to throw themselves at him. As for those who didn't, Yi Tianxia only needed to use a few tricks and they would take the initiative to lie in his bed. Moreover, he didn't know if it was because of the nature of dragons, but after refining the Blood Flood Dragon's inner core and cultivating the Blood Flood Dragon's Heart Sutra, Yi Tianxia's desire in that aspect became very strong. Therefore, whether it was the evil extreme sect's disciples or other female disciples who took the initiative to throw themselves at him, Yi Tianxia could be said to not reject any of them. However, those women were just ordinary women. It wasn't until now that he was facing the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden that Yi Tianxia realized what kind of person he was looking for. Moreover, Yi Tianxia was quite confident. In his opinion, how many young men of the devil lineage were qualified to compete with him? Lin Yi had some strength, but he was a member of the Yinma clan. However, the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden didn't give Yi Tianxia any face at all. Her attitude was simply extremely bad. In fact, the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden indeed had the qualifications to look down on Yi Tianxia. In the eyes of other devil martial artists, Yi Tianxia's identity was already very noble, but the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden was even more unattainable. Although the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden had yet to fully mature, she was destined to be one of the top 4 existences in the moon-worshipping sect in the future. Even if Yi Tianxia had potential, his identity was still not comparable to the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden. Even the sect master of the evil extreme sect, who was a martial arts grandmaster, had to be respectful when facing the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden. He didn't dare to act presumptuously. Therefore, when Yi Tianxia was taught a lesson by the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden, he was still rational and didn't flare up on the spot even though he was angry. At this moment, Chu Xiu happened to walk out of the Antai prefecture with his men and met Yi Tianxia and the others. Both sides were stunned for a moment. Yi Tianxia was stunned because he didn't expect Chu Xiu to come here, but Chu Xiu was not stunned because of the arrival of the evil extreme sect's martial artists, but because the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden was also here. In the past, during the righteous and demonic battles on Mount Floating Jade, the moon-worshipping sect's holy maiden was very outstanding. She was protected by several martial arts grandmasters, and she used her gu techniques to kill countless righteous martial artists. Yi Tianxia frowned. Chu Xiu, you're from the Guanzhong torture room. What are you doing here? Yi Tianxia had not dealt with Chu Xiu before. To be precise, he had not dealt with the identity of Chu Xiu, but he knew of Chu Xiu. In the past, the evil extreme sect recruited Tong Kai Tai, a rising star of the Longhu list, so that Yi Tianxia could support the evil extreme sect while he was in seclusion. In the end, not long after, Tong Kai Tai died at the hands of Chu Xiu. However, at that time, the evil extreme sect needed to keep a low profile, so the matter was forgotten. He didn't expect to run into Chu Xiu here again. Chu Xiu said faintly, "What a joke. Do I need to report to you, a member of the demonic Dao, when I come here?" Yi Tianxia frowned. He suddenly saw that some of the warriors under Chu Xiu were stained with blood, and the murderous intent that had yet to completely dissipate from their bodies. Yi Tianxia's expression couldn't help but change. He growled in a low voice. "What did you do to Zhang Chufan?" In the whole of Luan County, apart from Zhang Chufan, there had been no other major movements. Chu Xiu appearing here, and looking as if he had just killed someone, other than Zhang Chufan, Yi Tianxia couldn't think of anyone else. "What's wrong?" Chu Xiu laughed coldly and said, "What else can I do to a guy who claims to be a remnant of the Kunlun devil cult? Of course, I'll kill him on the spot." Yi Tianxia suddenly pulled out the long spear on his back, and his eyes turned golden like a snake's. He directly charged towards Chu Xiu. "You even dare to touch the person that the evil extreme sect wants to recruit. Chu Xiu, you're courting death." You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.